Okay. It is 6 p.m. We will call the July 12th County Board meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Roll call shows 20 supervisors present, 1 absent. Supervisor Teuteberg.
This time I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Supervisor
Bomar. Is there a second?
Later.
Later seconds. And green button to approve. Red.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I vote yes. He's Twitter. I'm looking something up.
20 yes, 0 no.
Okay, passes. Members of the public wishing to be heard? Matt Kelm? 5 minutes.
Hello, my name's Matt Kelm. I am the Chief of Police for the Chippewa Falls Police Department. First of all, I apologize for not being here last time. My purpose here is to thank this board as well as, and specifically the Law Enforcement Committee, for the kind words that they had for those police officers and investigators in the Lily Peters case. That recognition means a lot. And while I'm here just representative of all the work and all the officers, all the departments that worked on that, it was truly a team effort. And much of that work was done by investigators throughout Chippewa County, including the Eau Claire Sheriff's Department, the Chippewa County Sheriff's Department, and all the other agencies within those, in our area. It really showed, as I've said before, when we reached out for help, everyone came running, and it was really an amazing feeling. So I do thank you for recognizing that good work. And although it was a tragic incident, it really shows how this community comes together when it counts. So thank you. That proclamation is printed out. It'll be hanging up in a place of honor at the police department. So appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Okay, any other members of the public wishing to be heard that didn't to sign up? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Supervisor Bergeron, motions approved.
Is there a second? Peterson seconds. Okay. Any further discussion? Green to approve, red to not.
Okay. 20 yes, 0 no.
Okay. Passes. Reports. Information Technology Division, Andy Bauer.
All right. Good evening. I believe I've met and worked with all of you guys as you guys have come onto the board. But I want to give just a little bit of orientation on the division for a refresher for some of you that have been on the board for a while, and for the new members, probably reiterating some of the things that we covered on your first day meeting with me. So the vision and mission statement, I guess, for the Chippewa County IT Division is to support the county and city of Chippewa Falls with their technology needs. We want to do it in a great or a superior customer service, and make sure that we're doing things using technology that's available in a cost-effective manner. Looking at our org chart, we have a total of 9 people in the IT division. That's broken down with myself, and then I have 6 staff members underneath me that are part of the general IT support side of things. And then there's 2 staff members that are a part of the RWC consortium support that deals a lot with the human services and mental health side of things. So the majority of the general day-to-day county IT support is done by the 6 individuals on the IT side of things. The other ones are dealing with the RWC consortium, which is multiple counties throughout the area here. A big portion of our responsibility is device replacement, report, ongoing support, maintenance, and training. Basically, we are taking care of replacing all the individual computers and servers and data center equipment on a regular basis. With our data center, we have to make sure that that's highly available because we support a lot of the 24/7 operations with law enforcement and the jail and so forth. With all the end user devices, we want to make sure that those are reliable as well as they serve all of the constituents. So our laptops and computers are replaced on about a 5-year cycle unless things happen between year 4 and 5 that require them to be replaced early. And our data center equipment will vary between that 5 and 7 year period typically. Over the course of 2021, we had about 5,046 help desk tickets that were submitted to our department. So those are spread out amongst the different members of the team based on their expertise. That averaged about 19 tickets per day, which is quite a high number to maintain. So we also do a lot of project work. That's CIP projects or other department projects that are submitted throughout the year. And we work on prioritizing those with the department heads based on need and severity and things like that. Another big part of our job is to make sure that things are properly patched. Security, which I'll talk about a little bit more in this presentation, is a big thing. If we don't patch things on a regular basis, there's risk for bad actors to try to exploit vulnerabilities and get into our systems. And we have a lot of sensitive data for our different consumers and departments and things like that. And we want to make sure that those systems are always up and operational. Looking at the equipment that we maintain, I always like to start with a little bit of a history on this. The numbers that you see in the information on this slide is our current stuff. But looking back about 15 years ago, we had about 25 servers that we maintained when I started here. We had no wireless access points, so people couldn't bring in their laptops. Mobile devices like iPhones and things like that really weren't in existence at that point. Pretty much all desktops for the majority of the departments. The phones were actually maintained by the county clerk's office, so that transitioned over to the IT division, I think it was about 12 years ago. There was no virtualization. The redundancy that we have in place today really wasn't at the level where it needed to be for the enterprise systems that we support in 24/7 operations. So today we have about 130 virtual servers, over 500 computers and laptops that we maintain, almost 100 wireless access points spread throughout multiple different buildings and locations, over 500 phones. That's both for the Chippewa County phones and the city of Chippewa Falls. Over 85 network switches, firewalls, security cameras. We really didn't maintain those when I started here. There were some security cameras in the jail, and they were maintained by vendors and stuff that the jail worked with. Those ended up coming under the IT umbrella to make sure that we were getting those patched and secured as well as coming forward with the more high definition cameras that we put in here. I think it's about 5 years ago now. Which gives a lot better clarity so they can actually see what's happening in some of the stuff that they're pulling up. So, with all these devices that we have, once they're implemented, it's never that they're done being maintained. We always have to continue to patch those like I talked about for security purposes. So here's our security slide. So security, security, security. Bad actors are constantly trying to change how they attack organizations. With Chippewa County being a public entity, there's a lot of information that's available on our website that hackers can utilize, and I'll talk about that a little bit further on here, but it's just a constant battle to make sure we're keeping things as secure as possible. Over the last few years, we've continued to add new systems or improve our systems that we have in place, trying to stay ahead of them. We implemented some next-gen firewalls here a couple years ago. That was in coordinations with a election security grant that the county clerk's office was able to obtain. We just implemented multi-factor authentication, which is a huge security improvement. It makes it really tough for hackers to steal your passwords and still be able to get in. We also have done some other things like with network design changes to try to limit if a hacker does get into our network, that it makes it more difficult for them to go east and west, they call it, so kind of between systems. And additional logging for detection and being able to determine what happened if there was an incident. So all these things continue to help us to keep things more secure. You can never say you're 100% secure. There's always that risk, and most people say it's not about if you get attacked, it's about when and how you react to that. So another big thing that we're doing is continuing education for all employees. That's probably the biggest thing we're focusing on now, because hackers are really trying to find the easiest ways that they can get into the network. It's tough to get by some of these security systems that are put in place because they're designed to stop those things. So they're trying to trick users, or they're trying to make it so users click on attachments or they click on links. Some of the things that we cover with employees in their new user orientation is looking at emails. Email is the #1 attack mechanism at this point that we see, and things like looking at the email address. So when you're seeing an email coming in from an individual, it can say whatever name somebody wants it to say. So they could say that it's coming from Andy Bauer, but it's actually coming from a Gmail address. So we try to point out these things to users, and being a board member, you guys see a lot of these attacks as well. So take that time when you get those emails to actually look at the full email address, not just the name. I know they really try to find people that have titles that might be authority figures, for example, the county board chair, the administrator, department heads, and then they try to find email addresses that might be corresponding to people that might be reporting to those people. So I know we've had multiple reports of Dean sending out emails. Well, Dean's not sending out the emails.
I do not need any gift.
Yeah. And that's really what they're trying to do. They want to send out an email and they want to make you react quickly and say, hey, I want you to do a favor for me, and go out and buy me these gift cards so we can surprise all the wonderful employees or county board supervisors for all your hard work. And then when you get the gift cards, they want you to actually scratch off the codes on the back and send them a picture or send them the codes. And most people, when they look at that, they're like, well, no one will ever fall for that. Well, people do. We've actually had 2 incidents where people have fallen for that and have lost money as a result of it. So we constantly want to make people aware of this, and not to make people feel like they don't know anything or know enough about technology. We want you to be aware of it so that you can be on the lookout for it. And when you see it, you can be like, yep, this is junk. I'm just going to delete this email. The biggest thing with when you're having questions on something or you see something that's not right, ask questions. You can submit a ticket to us or give us a call. You can call the person that had submitted the email to you. So if it looks like it's coming from Dean, you can always give Dean a call and say, hey, did you actually send this email to me? And when he says no, then okay, well, I can delete it. Other things that they try to do is they try to change the email addresses. So when you get an email from email@co.chippewa.wi.us, some people will make it so that it's at c0.chippewa.wi.us. They try to make it so that when you look at the email, if you're just taking a quick glance, you don't recognize that one character is maybe changed. So another thing for you guys to kind of be on a lookout if you're seeing weird emails or something doesn't seem quite right.
Andy, I just had a quick question. You mentioned deleting an email before opening it, and I understand and appreciate that. But
Yep.
when it goes into the trash, does that cause any problems for you? Is that?
Nope, you guys can delete the emails, and it's not going to cause issues. And just so you guys are aware too, you can actually open up the email to see what it says. That's not going to cause any harm. but clicking on links within it, if it's a malicious link or attachments, that's usually where the trouble starts to happen. Or in these other ones that they've been doing a lot lately, they're not even attaching email attachments or links. They're just trying to get correspondence to try to trick people into sending them information that they want. So,
The $13 million I'm not gonna get.
yep. And realistically, when you look at these emails, when it's just plain text and it's coming from a Gmail account, security systems can't catch that because there's nothing to flag in the system. It's just a normal email. We can't block Gmail accounts because our clients and consumers and constituents are all using Gmail accounts. And so if we were to block them, they wouldn't be able to communicate with us. So yeah, you can open them, you can delete them, just use extreme caution. If you're not expecting an email from somebody and there's a link or an attachment, ask questions, be a little suspicious, which really seems weird because we always want to trust people, but in today's age with technology, you really have to not trust to start with and make sure that it's what you were expecting. Other things, we see a lot of emails that will be coming out and they'll be signed as a generic signature at the bottom. So instead of saying it was from Andy Bauer, it comes out and it says it's from the IT team. Well, that's one thing that says, okay, put up a red flag. Why is somebody signing this as a generic title? Or it might say HR team. We've seen those as well. In those cases, it might still be a legitimate email. You might want to, use a little bit more caution with it and read through it and then contact people if you're not sure. But those are just kind of red flags that tell you to kind of slow down a little bit. We're seeing the same thing with text messages. So the generic emails that are coming out that look like they're coming from a department head or things like that, they're also using phone numbers that they find on the website from you board members because your phone numbers are listed so that people are able to contact you. Well, they start sending text messages and they say, oh, this is so-and-so and I want you to do me a favor again. Same kind of scenario, but they use text messages as a means to deliver it. Another big thing, if you do click on a link, a lot of times we're seeing that these links are redirecting you to other sites that may look very similar to like our Outlook web access page. And so again, they're trying to get you to react quickly. So you click on a link and it's like, oh, it's a login screen. You start putting your username and password in. Once you hit submit, it sends those credentials to that hacker. And you might get a page that says, oh, page can't be displayed. And they don't want you to do anything more at that point. They got the information that they want, and then they can try to log into your email account with those credentials. So, if you're clicking on a link that takes you to a login page of some sort, always look at the address bar. Make sure that that's a correct address bar and it matches what you're expecting it to. So, again, they're always changing things, and we are doing a lot of training for new users. So we have new user orientation on the first day that employees start, and we go through a lot of these same things as we're talking about here. We have training videos that we're doing every 2 months. It's about a 5-minute training video that are being sent out to all employees that they have to watch. We try to keep it lighthearted. There's some cartoon type ones that are a little bit more humorous with the user saying, oh, I need to click on this HR email, and they start clicking and somebody's like, wait, don't do that. And so keeps people entertained, but it also is teaching those lessons so that people are aware of kind of the risks that we're seeing out there. We have a product that does simulated phishing emails as well. So a lot of these emails that are actual phishing attempts can be very difficult to identify. They could be UPS failure notifications for a delivery. And with today being Prime Day, a lot of people are ordering stuff. So if they start sending these out to everybody, somebody's going to click on one of those because they thought a package was supposed to be coming. So the simulated phishing attempts that we do are they're very similar to what real hackers are actually doing today. And it's not an attempt to try to fool people, but it's in an attempt to try to bring that awareness. So if they do accidentally click on one that's a simulated one, they get a little message that says, sorry, you've clicked on a simulated phishing email, and it'll give them a little bit of training information to try to, bring that awareness up, and the next time then they won't click on it. So we also work a lot with employees about alerting us with emails that they see that are maybe suspicious or things like that. So we can then research them, and then we can notify all employees if we see a trend or if email went out to a lot of people. We let people know so we don't get additional people clicking on them. So if you guys see really suspicious emails and stuff like that, you can submit help desk tickets, and we can definitely look into them and do proper notification if we need to. Other things that we do to try to keep the county safe, we go through penetration testing on a periodic basis, where we have a company come in that will look at our network and try to basically gain entry into the network, and then once they have entry into the network, see what they see for vulnerabilities and things like that. Again, it's a learning exercise for us so that we can better protect the county's network and get better every step of the way, because there's always something you can do to be better. A lot of these things don't cost a ton of money, but there's also things that are going to cost funds to invest into them. So we also do a lot of patching. So we have patching processes that we do on a weekly basis, sometimes more frequently. There's always new things being put out in the media that are talking about vulnerabilities with, Windows operating systems, with firewalls and things like that. So we have to go and actually patch all those systems. At the end of the day, the bad actors, they're looking to make money. Some of these bad actors are going after the smaller amounts of money, $1,000, $2,000. But the bigger ones that we're seeing now are the ransomware attacks, where they will try to lock an organization's complete file systems down, and then they start asking for big dollar amounts. We're seeing hundreds of thousands of dollars up into the millions of dollars. These hackers, too, are trying to get very strategic, where they try to find out what organizations have for cybersecurity insurance, and then from there, they try to ask for that dollar amount because they know that you have access to those funds. So again, it's a big thing that we're trying to do to keep things secure so we don't end up in that situation. The last thing to talk about on cybersecurity insurance, cybersecurity, is that we want to have good personal and work hygiene. And what that means is we want to make sure that we're doing the things here at work that we want to also do at home, and vice versa. We've heard about incidents where people will use the same passwords for both home and business accounts, and they compromise one, well, then it allows them into the other one. So we really stress for people to try to have different passwords for all systems, and at a minimum, if they can't do that, try to separate it out so your home passwords and user accounts don't match your work ones. So I would stress the same things for you as board members. If you have accounts here at the county, try not to make those passwords the same as your home accounts. All right, so moving on to successful department projects. So we've learned a lot over the years and have continually tried to improve our processes to make projects run more smoothly. And this is kind of a list of bullet points that we've went through that have really made it so our projects have been more successful. So getting IT aware of upcoming projects so we can plan for them and have the time allotted for them. Defining the projects is probably the biggest thing. If we don't have a well-defined project, things really go sideways in a hurry. We also research, do proof of concepts. We follow industry best practices, security measures too. We can never have enough security, it seems, nowadays. We go through the implementation process, testing, go live, and then documentation is probably one of the bigger stressors that we're having in our department, because if you have turnover in a department and you don't have documentation, it makes it very difficult for supporting those systems going forward. And we know that there tends to be more turnover nowadays in jobs than there would have been maybe 30 years ago. So we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. All right, so the big thing with technology is we want to find business value by using technology to meet business goals. Whether that's department-specific savings, efficiencies, better customer service to the citizens. We want to make sure that we're aligning with the strategic plan. We also need to make sure that our system uptime is very high. We strive for the 5 nines or higher. Data replication, high availability, backups, that all kind of goes into that high, making sure that systems are up and running. And we also want to make sure we have a disaster recovery plan. So if there is something that has a failure, we have a way to recover from that. Go back to the slide. So some of the systems that we've put in place over the years that have kind of fallen into this model is we've implemented a new phone system years ago. I think we're at about 12 years since we implemented that. That was a huge investment, but the cost savings were pretty substantial. I know our monthly phone service costs went down significantly, as well as the administration and maintenance of the system was much easier to do than the old system. We've implemented document management systems to streamline open enrollment processes, the financial AP processes, which included barcoding checks so they could be scanned in. And then we also have continued to limit our maintenance windows that we have, trying to keep that 24/7 support with as small a downtimes as possible. Chippewa County's invested a lot in technology over the years. Currently, there's about $2.15 million invested. Kind of shows the breakdown of that. These pieces of equipment, like we talked about, are replaced on a regular basis. So it's not like it's a $2.1 million and you're done. It's the continual funding that you guys have continued to provide to make sure that we have the systems up and running as they should. This slide just shows kind of the investment that's been made over the years. One thing to note with this, in 2020, there was a bump in the amount of money that was used for the replacements, and that was due to some of the sound systems replacements in the courtrooms as well as in here, room 302. In 2022, there was also some additional video conferencing updates that are being done in the courtroom. But you can see pretty consistently, otherwise, we're in that $200,000 to $300,000 range to make sure that these systems stay up and running. Also, one thing that really doesn't show on this is there was a project in 2018 for the security camera updates. So that was the jail, the courthouse, and outlying buildings that were equipped with security cameras. So those cameras will be coming due to be replaced here in upcoming years, and you'll see those coming through as part of CIP projects. This slide just shows the tax levy that's been put into the department's operating budget over the years, as well as the revenue. Our revenue sources that we have for the IT division are the contract we have with the city of Chippewa Falls, as well as the RWC Consortium and Country Fest and Rock Fest events that we help to support. So we're continuing trying to increase the revenue. We're looking to increase the revenue through the city 5% every year for the next 3 years. Again, our previous contract was for that amount, so we're working through that process as well. Looking at our budget, excluding wages and benefits, just so you guys are aware, about 84% of our operating budget goes to maintenance contracts. So that's for the subscriptions and the fees that we have to pay for vendors to continually get updates and things like that to keep our systems secure and up to date. Sync is the next thing we'll talk about. So Sync is a Chippewa Valley Internetworking Consortium. It's a regional community area network. This organization was founded back in 1999, and that was all before the whole Y2K bug was supposed to hit, and a bunch of local organizations, the schools, the counties were getting together to talk about how do we address the Y2K issues. And when they started to meet, they found out that a lot of the organizations had similar challenges, and it was really a good resource for them to work together to try to come up with solutions for them. Sync ended up becoming an unincorporated association in 2011, and it continued to evolve from there, where now we are having fiber in the ground that allows us to share applications and provide the necessary backbone and infrastructure for our organizations to get the job done that we need to. Currently, there are about 40 members that are part of the Sync organization. There's an application process if a member wants to become a Sync member, and it really focuses around local government, schools, libraries, and healthcare. Those are kind of the 4 anchor institutions that fit into the mold of what a Sync member is. So you see them all listed up here. The Sync has work group meetings that any member is able to attend. We do those twice a month now, the first and third Thursday of each month. So that's where we continue to collaborate on organizations' needs, challenges that we have to address within the organization. We also work on maintaining the fiber plant that has been put in over the years as part of those meetings. There's an executive committee that's made up of 12 members. Chippewa County is one of those members. Those are the voting members that help to make the decisions, similar to the county board does here. They will help to steer the direction of that Sync organization. The one big thing to note with Sync is with the fiber that we have in the ground, nobody owns it. It's the organization, so it really helps to protect the members of the organization, that if a member contributes funding to a project to get something that they need, that fiber is all part of the organizations, and if that member wanted to walk away, that fiber stays within the organization. So if we didn't have that in place, if one of the bigger players that had put a lot of money into it walked away, it could create some major gaps for other members, cause a lot of heartache. So that was one of the big things that they did to protect this organization. The motto for SYNC is to collaborate, connect, and save, basically working together to try to be as efficient with funds that we have to get the most bang for the buck, put infrastructure in place that will benefit the organizations that are members of this. Today we have about 230 miles of 96 strand fiber that's within the Chippewa Valley region, and you can see the value of that is in excess of $13 million. There's also tower sites that were put up as part of a grant that I'll talk about here in a second. There's 16 tower sites that are providing WiMAX or LTE service as part of this. And that service is to the member organizations to complete the tasks that they have. So some organizations will use that for their law enforcement. I know the city of Eau Claire was using that at one point. I don't know if they still are, but that's where that is used. So talking a little bit about the grants, in 2010, SYNC collaborated with UW Extension and received a $32.3 million grant to improve broadband services. About $11.5 million of that went to construct more than 200 miles of fiber in the Chippewa Valley. So that really helped the organization to grow and to meet the needs of the organization. In 2016, Chippewa County continued to partner with WIN, Wisconsin Independent Networks, and we received a PSC grant for a $546,000 project to get fiber into the Lake Wissota Business Park. So that allowed WIN to provide connectivity to the businesses that were coming into that business park, and it also allowed connectivity for Chippewa County and other SYNC members that would have need for access in that area as well. SYNC continues to follow, continues to be a role model community area network. We have bylaws that are in place. We utilize intergovernment agreements, memorandums of understanding for all the agreements that we have with different organizations that we work with. And if, like I talked about before, if one member would disengage, it doesn't diminish the operability or connectivity for the organization because nobody owns that fiber. They're not allowed to take that fiber with them if they leave. So they basically walk away and would have to get their own connectivity at that point. As a CAN, there's minimal fees that are used for the fiber locates to continue to make sure that our plant is not hit with backhoes and things like that, and to support the other network maintenance that we have for the organization. With the fiber network that we put in place with SYNC, there's a lot of redundancy built in because there's a lot of critical applications for hospitals, emergency service, police and fire and such that utilize these for mission critical applications. So looking at success stories, so there's been a lot of success that we've seen as being a member of SYNC. One of the things that we saw was early on we had leased lines that would go to like our highway department and other buildings that we were paying monthly fees for. They were very limited in bandwidth, 1.5 megabytes, which is very slow in today's network speeds. We are now connecting those at either 1,000 megabytes or 10,000 megabytes, depending on what we have for needs at those sites. So those are huge improvements for highway where they have to deal with large CAD files and things like that. We've also been able to share applications with the city of Chippewa Falls. So that's our phone system, our servers, storage, document imaging, email, Active Directory, all these things we're able to share and not have to duplicate those services. So it not only makes their life easier, it also makes our life easier that we're not maintaining two systems. We also have outlying buildings that are connected. The gun range was connected, the hot mix plant, maintenance garages, tower sites, and so forth. The city of Chippewa Falls is a member of SYNC as well, and they have multiple sites within the city that are all connected. We've also utilized shared purchasing. So when we did our initial phone system implementation, we went out to RFP to get bids, and as an organization as a whole, it allowed us to get much better and much more competitive pricing for implementing those phone systems. We also share technical knowledge in those work group meetings, which is beyond beneficial when you have many different systems that you're trying to maintain. Not everyone is an expert on everything, so we can pick each other's brains to continue to maintain those systems. With the IT division, this is just our contact information. So as board members, if you guys ever need any assistance, we have a help desk email address you can email, or our telephone number is listed there. If you call that telephone number, you'll get an auto attendant. It'll list all the members' names and what option to hit to reach those. And if you do have emergencies, there's an emergency option to hit in there as well. There's a lot of information. Anyone have questions on any of that?
Mr.
Andy, when I back my iPad up, is it on the cloud or is it goes to your servers?
If you're using the iCloud backup on there, that would go to Apple's cloud. All of your emails on your iPad are backed up on our servers, so you
Okay.
won't have to do anything with those.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Miller.
It's kind of a security question. Regarding the fiber optics networks and stuff, I imagine there are service points. Are those pretty well hardened and protected?
There's vaults that are in various locations. Just like any other providers, they're in the ground. The lids are very heavy. They're not locked. I don't think many of the providers lock theirs, if any, for the vaults that are in the ground. But people aren't able to just tap into those fibers to like access information. If they were trying to do that, they would end up cutting the fiber and the link would go dead basically at that point.
All right, thank you. Human Resources Division orientation, Tony?
All right, good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tony Holfelder. I am the Human Resources Director for Chippewa County. Been here for about 7 years. And we have a lot of slides to go through. Brevity is not my gift, so I hope to get through this so Todd can go next. All right, the first few slides is really to give an overview of human resources before I dive into some of the specific things that we actually handle. And so this first slide, for those of you just curious, what is human resources? There's a couple different things we listed up here. Employees that make up our department, there's terms like human capital. You've heard our division, we support, give advice, guidance regarding our county employees to allow us to best meet the needs of the county. There's lots of different terms that people use for human resources. I know where Randy came from. He stepped out. He was part of the personnel department, and so that's been a traditional name for HR. There's also some of the new things like talent management, people resources, engagement and resources. We've heard of chief happiness officer and a lot of other different things. Ours here at Chippewa County is the Human Resources Division, or a division of the DOA team. A lot of times in my career, you'll hear people ask, what does human resources do? And a lot of times the easy answer is we do everything from the hiring to the firing, right? Everything in the middle. What's up here are, if you were to go into human resources, there's lots of tracks. So somebody could be a generalist and have all of these things as part of their jobs. The larger the organization, the more people specialize. So in our department, we have some people who are definitely specialized, which we're going to go through in a couple different slides. But we have a lot of overlap, so we're all very cross-trained within the department. All of us in the Human Resources Division love people. That's why we're in the human resources field. But we also really love the law. We love rules. We like policy. We like following them. We like helping people follow them as well. We think it creates a lot of order. So you're going to have a lot of that when you come into our office with all of the staff. But again, this is a list of all the different kind of focuses within the HR field. So why should you care about human resources? Obviously, because of it's a large part of the county budget. When you look at organizations, like manufacturing organizations, sometimes you'll see the actual salaries as a lower percentage because they have equipment and they have a lot of other inventory. And then you'll have your service industries, which will have a lot more of their overall budget in staff because they don't have a lot of the actual equipment or supplies. Here at Chippewa County, what we've seen over the course of the last several years that I've been with the county is it's definitely within that 50% until this last year. So this last year was the first time it hasn't been between that 45 to 50%. And that's when I talked to our finance director to find out why, because she's who I go to for all the numbers. It was really because of a lot of the ARPA funding. The projects that were built in, there's $6 million. So that's, of course, going to offset some of that salary that's normally there. So that's the reason for that 38% of the total budget is allocated to salaries for this 22 budget. And then those are some totals up there for you. All right, so here is another slide on why you should care, and it's just really the count of employees. And so when you look up there, we have our general municipal employees, GME, is 402. We have 23 WPPA employees, and this was all as of June 1st of this year. This does change every 2 weeks. We have people who might be coming and going, but as of June 1st, this is where we were at. We have 6 elected officials. Those include like Jackie, our treasurer, so it's not you, it's those who are our department heads within the county. We have 21 county board supervisors, and then at the time I ran this, it was 53 paid committee members. This is actually higher than the last 2 county board orientations, and that's because we have several people that are still here because of the pandemic. So we have 20 in public health as contract tracers, disease investigators, and admin staff to help. So they're LTEs, they're not full-time employees, but that's also included in there. We also currently have 13 vacancies. We do typically have vacancies every time we provide this. It is a little bit higher right now, obviously because of the current state of the economy. All right, the next several slides I think really help if we just describe and talk a little bit about each of the members of the HR division, because each of us have some different roles. So the first member up here, her name is Joanna Hart. Some of you might have met her as you were onboarded. She's an HR generalist, but her focus is really leave management. So we have several different leaves. We have family medical leaves, that's the FMLA. We have an additional leave called county medical, and then we have personal leave. She's responsible for working. She has a great relationship with a lot of our employees, helping them through these. Sometimes these are really tough, sometimes they're really exciting times in their life. She also helps people through all work injuries, so workers' compensation, claims management, safety. She's on our safety work groups, and she helps with security and all of our access to our building. She helps with any ADA, so that's Americans with Disability Act, so any accommodations for someone who might have a disability. She's the lead of our wellness work group, so she helps with all of our health assessments that we offer for employees, flu shots, and a lot of the different employee education that we offer, like Lunch and Learns. She does all of our equal employment opportunity administration. She works with our EAP to make sure all that communication is going out through Real Living, which is the company that we work with. And then she's also trained as a backup in a lot of areas, but primarily for new employee orientation. So that's Joanna, and she's been with us for 5 years, almost 5 years now. Kathy, now she started with us as an HR assistant, and she was an LTE, so a limited term, working about 19 hours a week. And in September, she moved to full-time, and she's actually also working part-time, about 500 hours in Larry Ritzinger's division in the Facilities and Parks department or division. So she's working about 1,500 hours with us in the HR division. Her role is to assist our department, so she does a lot of document retention, so all the personnel files, all of our bills and mail, so a lot of administrative tasks. She also assists with IDs and access. She's also a backup for payroll and recruitment, so she is very trained in a lot of the different areas to help both of our generalists out, and helps with a lot of the onboarding. And she's also been with us for 5 years. Our newest member, her name is Christy Ketterhagen. She came to us from Menards. She's had lots of experience in the recruitment side there. She is our onboarding specialist. So she really does get to meet the employee all the way from the beginning to the end. So she helps all of our department heads with the recruitment process, advertising, helping them through all of that onboarding from pre and post offer testing, new employee orientation, and then the ongoing is the benefit administration. So she doesn't have as much experience on the back end part of benefits. So I've been really taking a lot of the back end benefits as we've been moving forward here in the last year. But she does have a lot of experience onboarding employees, and she has a wealth of knowledge in that area. She also helps with payroll. So between her and Kathy, who I just spoke about, they toggle back and forth every other pay week, processing payroll and then doing all of our ACA compliance. She also helps employees when they decide to exit the organization, whether it's through a retirement or a resignation. She'll help them through their benefit process, answer any of their questions, and help them through that as well. Helps with unemployment, and then also our document retention software, the Laserfish system. And so again, she started with us in October of last year. And then I have myself up here. I started, like I said, about 7 years ago. I handle all the policy development and administration. We're going through the HR policy manual right now, so we'll be right back in front of you again next month. And so we talk a lot about that and handle that. All employee relations. And so I have an opinion, I guess. And so what we've done in our division is any employment relation issues really do come to me. And that's for consistency, so that if one department head has a specific issue where their employee is struggling in performance, in an area of performance, we can make sure that we're treating employees fairly because it's coming through one lens. It's not that Joanna in my office or Christy in our office would do something wrong, but if we're inconsistent, that could cause a problem for the county. And so all employee investigations that we might have to go through, or if there's employee discipline, any kind of coaching or management coaching that they would need in this area, I would handle all of that in our office. Labor relations, right now we're going through, it just started WPPA negotiations. We haven't even had our first meeting yet, but that's something we go through each contract cycle. I work with Todd Pauls in Corporation Counsel, and then Randy, and then the Sheriff's Department and the WPPA representative through that process. I help with all compensation issues, so we have our salary schedule, all of the position classifications, our job descriptions, all of that is part of my role in the office. I'm Chippewa County's Civil Rights Compliance Officer, and our LEP, which is a language efficiency. So if someone needs help with, because maybe they can't, they need sign or they have a different language barrier, I'm the officer for that, as well as the privacy officer. That's related to HIPAA, so for anybody who's interested in that. All of the interpretation and administration of any applicable law, again, all of us are trained, the two generalists and myself, but that's one of my roles as well. And then employee engagement and leadership training. Engagement is something that we started in 2019, so that's been a huge part of my role and quite honestly a passion of mine as well. That's an overview of our division. The next several slides I'm going to jump into are some specific things that we felt like the county board would be interested in. Specific to this division. So the first one is performance review update. We had a software change in 2020. We were paying a fee for a software called ReviewSnap, and we transitioned with the help of IT and one of Andy's experts there on the Laserfish software to transition and save, it's about $9,000 a year in a software fee to transition to a software we already have, or a tool we already have with Laserfish. So when we do a performance review, we're doing that every December, we communicate that the process is going to start, and it does end by March 1st. So every year our managers are required to do a performance review, and then these are the questions and the ratings that are being evaluated each year. So for employees, it's evaluating their job knowledge and technical competence, customer service, productivity and results, and teamwork. And for our supervisors, it's those same competencies as well as adaptability, facilitating change, and performance management and coaching and delegation. And then those are 4 categories that each of them are rated. Catch up with my notes here. All right, the next slide is regarding our annual wage adjustments. And so per policy, what we do is in August or September each year, the county administrator will recommend via resolution the appropriate funding level to provide an across-the-board percentage increase to all general municipal employees. And it's for the following fiscal year. So in August of this coming August, we have a resolution that Randy will be bringing forward. This resolution will be considered by you, the county board, at the same time as all position requests and any insurance premiums. So again, next county board meeting, those 3 resolutions will come before you. The resolution will also include any salary schedule adjustments for the next fiscal year. So if we were going to do a market analysis or those types of things, all of that would be included, so that'd be part of the next budget cycle. This will give the county board a full perspective of all salary adjustments recommended for each year. One other thing to add after just talking about performance reviews, and then this as well, is that you as county board supervisors will be asked to provide input so that the executive committee can do a performance review on Randy every year. So that survey will go out in December. It'll actually ask all the same questions that he's evaluated by the executive committee and eventually by the county board chair. And that process will start in January. So we'll ask for your input as well as the department heads, the elected officials, and then some external members of the public that work closely with the county administrator. So this is more just a reminder that you'll be getting that. All right, I'm going to pause for a second and ask if there's any question. All right, I'll keep going. As it relates to the historical funding for wages, and so what you're going to get next month, like I said, is a resolution that's going to articulate what the total impact is for wages. And so I put up here since 2015, when we used to have a pay for performance wage increases, and so there was an estimate that was put in place, which was the $175,000 in levy that we felt would be impacted in 2015. And then in 2016, that was for pay for performance as well as market analysis, the same amount you'll see for 2015, 16, and 17. 2018, it did go up to the 195, and the reason for that was that for the first time, we also made some compression changes and also added a few dollars because of those compression changes. And then it came back down in 2019 to 180, and then back up again for another market analysis and pay for performance. And then you'll see that we're been back for the across the board increase. We no longer have pay for performance as of 2021 and 2022. So it's been pretty consistent except for those couple years because of the market analysis adjustments as well. All right, so our HR policy manual does read that we will do a market analysis and compare internal and external factors at least once every 4 years. Since I've been with the county, we've done it every 2 years. And then the last time that we were gonna do this would have been in 2020, 2021 for gotta make sure I say this right. Evaluated in 2021 for 2022. But because we would have needed to budget for that analysis to happen at the end of 2020, and we all know what was happening in the world in 2020, the county administrator decided not to do that at that time and to pause and see what happened. And then our plan was to actually do one then in 2023 for effective 2024. And so that's what the expectation is now going forward. All of our employees are aware of that as well. And so we'll be waiting for a 4-year cycle instead of a 2-year cycle. We are aware that there's going to be a potential bigger fiscal impact because of that wait. We might be further behind, but we'll be trying to work through that as we work through the budget process over the next 2 years. When we do make changes, because of market analysis, those effective dates for those changes have been January 1. For anybody who has an across-the-board increase, those effective dates for those changes are July 1st, and that's to be able to kind of offset the fiscal impacts. So sorry, I got ahead of myself on this slide. This is where it explains that our employees were notified in 2020, the last line, that the next market analysis will occur in 2023, and all changes will be effective January 1 of 2024. We have used a consulting firm, Carlson Detman, for the last market analysis. Prior to that, we used a company called McGrath HR Group. And so we went out to bid for this last one, and so we'll definitely make sure that we're reviewing those RFPs for any consulting that we get. All right, the next couple of slides address employee engagement, and so this is really a history kind of where we've come. In September of 2019 was when the county sent out our first employee engagement survey. And this was through, we used a tool called Gallup Q12. It consists of 12 questions and 3 open-ended questions. So 12 questions that are rated and then open-ended questions. It was administered by a gal by the name of Jenna Bidwell from Carlson Detman. They were very instrumental in helping us with all the tools and the reporting. They helped train our employees. So in October, we held leadership training with department heads and managers prior to handing out survey. We brought a presentation to the county board, as well as some videos that kind of explained what engagement meant. In 2019 and through January of 2020, managers also held meetings with all of their staff to review the results and get input from employees. So it isn't about just getting the survey results. It's also about having some strategic meetings that follow them to talk about the results, to try and understand how to improve. In December of 2019, we reviewed the county-wide overall and generational results with the county board. In February of 2020, all action plans were due to the county administrators by the department heads, and that was due on February 15th of 20. And then April through September of 2020, the county administrator and department heads held meetings to discuss the status of those action plans. And then I also was able to work with Randy and take all the themes that we had learned from not only just the 12 questions, but also all of the open-ended feedback and develop some action plans from all of those themes as well. This was quite an undertaking for the first year with the county. Then in September of 2020, a year later, we resurveyed with the exact same tool a second time. We held some engagement survey retraining. So Carlson Detman, Jenna Bidwell came back on site to help with that. And between November of 2020 and January of 2021, we also held meetings to review results. So department heads met with their teams, gathered more input, developed more different action plans. January of 2021, we reviewed the county-wide overall and generational results with the county board, and we saw improvement. So that was exciting. I think there was very few departments that had any kind of slide to their results. It was an improvement overall for most departments. And then from January to March, action plans were due to the county board after departments met with their teams. So then what happened is when we looked at that feedback, we could tell from some of the open-ended feedback as well as just the oral communication that there were some gaps. Employees wanted to provide another set of information. And at this point in time, what we're doing as a county before we did what's on this next slide is we have an exit interview process. So when people decide to leave the organization, they're providing us usually some feedback in a survey form, or when they sit down with Christy, or before Christy was here, it was Alex Stipetich, and providing some information on why they're leaving. And we would compile that and work with the department heads, potentially work with Randy on trying to improve some of those things. We also do what's called an onboarding survey. So after 3 to 6 months that somebody has been with us, we send them a survey and ask, how did we do? How did we do in the area of recruitment? How did we do in the area of orientation from HR, orientation from the management team, and what areas can we improve? Then we're asking about the engagement, 12 questions, and there were still some questions I think our employees wanted to provide. And it was in the area that we had ended up addressing in the STAY survey. So things from leadership, from the culture within their department, from benefits and policies. And so for the first time, we did a STAY survey asking them, why are you staying with the organization? Or have you ever thought about leaving? And if so, why did you think about it? And why did you decide to stay? And just try to also answer some of those questions to help with the goal being we want to be the best place for people to work here in the Chippewa Valley. And so that was always kind of the goal with all of those surveys and all that feedback. So in September of 2021, we developed and sent out a STAY survey that asked, like I said, different questions based on the engagement survey feedback. We did that via SurveyMonkey. The plan going forward for the county is to send out a Gallup Q12 survey on every even year. So it's 2022. In September, we're going to do the Q12 again, so it'll be the third time. And then in the odd years, we'll do the STAY survey. I've had a lot of experience my entire career doing surveys, and employees kind of get burnt out if you do the same thing over and over. So this was kind of to help ask different questions every other year. In January of 2022, department heads received all the STAY survey feedback that we had asked for in September of 2021, specific to their department. And I'll say that was late in what normally I would have wanted to get that out in October and November, but we had a COVID spike. So that kind of put me back a little bit. So I was not happy that it took that long to get those results out to them. The action plans were due by February of 2022. And then in June, which was actually just last month, a PowerPoint was put together and a training video, or not a training video, a summary video of all of the results were sent out to all employees. It's an optional video. It's not required for employees to watch. We sent it through our local GovU learning management system, so they have until September. I think they'll continue to get some reminders if they wish to watch that and understand all the different results that came from those state surveys. And again, our plan is to re-survey in September of this year. All right, next couple slides are on benefit administration. We've made a lot of changes in the last several years. I'll say that some of that has to do with a county administrator that feels passionate about benefits. In 2019, we changed brokers from a company called Hayes, to a company called Hayes Company. Now they have been bought out by Brown & Brown. It's been a great change. They're very, very creative in their thinking. They like to save us money. They're very proactive on our behalf. It's been a great relationship change in August of 2019. We've also added several employee benefits. So prior to this, we did not have dental insurance, vision insurance, accident or critical insurance. So all 4 of those benefits have been added. We also changed flexible spending account vendors. We had some issues due to administration as well as potential liability for our employees because they were not managing some of those claims as they were getting submitted correctly. And so it could be potentially put our employees at risk of potentially getting reimbursed through the flex account for care that they shouldn't have been. And so we have a good vendor now managing that. Brown & Brown, along with the HR division, also created some Brain Shark videos. And we've started to really try and help our employees on the training side of benefits. And that was done in 2020. Hayes Companies administered a benefit survey in 2020, and the county stay survey gathered benefit information in 2021. So we continue to get really good benefit information and desires from our employees. We tested something called a concierge service with a company called iBenefits, and it's free for the county employees. Really, what I believe it is a tool for if employees don't want to ask HR personal questions about their benefits and try and brainstorm what's best for them. It's a way to have an outside agency do that. We're still just trying to decide if we want to offer this in 2022. We have a great relationship with a lot of our employees calling us, and so each year we've had the response rate to this service go down. So we're still trying to decide if this is something we're going to offer in 2022. And then we held some wellness strategic planning meetings as well to try and develop some new ideas as it relates to benefits. So moving forward, and you'll hear about this a lot as we start to move forward, effective in January of this year, the county moved from a fully insured health insurance plan with a company called Security Health Plan, who we had been with prior to me even starting. So I want to say it was about 8 to 10 years, maybe even longer. And that was a fully insured plan, and now we're self-funded. And so who our relationship with is to manage our self-funded plan is a third-party administrator is Ameriben. The preferred provider organization is Anthem Blue Preferred. So some people know Blue Cross Blue Shield in this area. That is our provider network. It's not our insurance provider. And we also have a pharmacy benefit manager, which is called PPM of IngenioRx. When you're self-funded, you tend to have a lot of different contracts, but the plan is owned and self-funded by the county. Some other initiatives that we're discussing and researching and hoping to move forward, but we'll also be educating employees on, is something called Advanced Primary Care Clinic. It could be a near-site clinic. So there's lots of organizations who are starting to get creative and using near-site clinics, trying to steer employees to those. It's for cost savings as well as better primary care. Developing a contract for contract for transplants or gene therapy. So again, those are things we still have to brainstorm and discuss. And then creating some cost containment strategies, which sounds like a big word, for really just changing the plan design to try and help people with musculoskeletal care, which is really encouraging physical therapy before using things like pharmacy or surgery as a response to an injury or to a need. And so there's a lot of evidence out there that physical therapy is the best first place to start. And so doing some education and some plan design changes around that. And then Brown & Brown has a lot of other dreams and things that they want to talk to us about, like direct contracting and offering incentivized pricing to encourage people to go to certain providers. There's certain providers in this area where if you need a CT scan, it might cost $10,000 or a certain kind of procedure, that if you just went to Menominee or maybe even to the cities, it might be $500. And so finding out to make sure that they were steering them to a good quality provider, but also educating them on the cost savings. And it wouldn't be required by any means, but there would be some incentivizing that would be able to do that. And you can't do that when you're fully insured. So these are some really fun, creative things that we can do when you're self-funded. And then some technology benefit tools that we could offer our employees. So these are really exciting things now that we're self-funded that we might be able to discover and help our employees with. All right, so this is just an overview and a slide that tells you exactly what benefits we have and who our providers are. Like I said, we're self-insured, and so our TPA is Ameriben. Our network is Blue Preferred through Anthem. Our dental is with Delta Dental, vision's with VSP. We have a life insurance, long-term disability, and short-term disability with NIS. Accident and critical is with MetLife. We have WRS for retirement, but we also offer deferred comp with Nationwide. Our flexible spending accounts is with DBS, Diversified Benefit Services. Our COBRA administrator is Flight HCM, and our broker is Brown & Brown. This is our timeline. Quarter one, and really this is going to be ongoing now that we're self-funded, but we're always going to be analyzing claim data. We get updates every month. Now that you're self-funded, it feels a little different. I get really scared that it's going to be a spike and how that's going to affect our renewals each year, and you're going to see it a lot more clear and more transparent now that we're self-funded. So it's positive and negative at the same time, depending on what that data tells us. But we'll be always analyzing it even more detailed in Q1 and quarter one. In quarter two, which has already happened, Brown provides some premium estimates for the next year's budget cycle, because that's when we start to talk about that. And we'll provide those to the department heads so that they can build them into their budgets, which we've already done. In quarter three, which will start next month, a resolution will be provided to the county board to establish the health insurance premiums. And it's in parentheses there, it's an estimate. And the reason for that is stop loss insurance, because we're not fully self-funded, we're partially self-funded, meaning that we still have an insurance policy for any large claims, and that's called stop loss or captive insurance. They don't give you rates until October or November, so we won't be completely locked in and have final costs until that time. But our broker, along with all the claims data we have, will have a very strong estimate that we'll be able to provide in that resolution next month. And we will bring another one in quarter four if something does change with that stop loss. And the only reason it would is if we had a huge high claim or multiple large claims that they decided that they needed to increase those rates. And then there's some renewal history for you. We've been very successful for many years. My history with benefits previously to coming here for 15 years was double digits every year for our employees. It was great to see this. 2015, we had a 0%, 2016, 0.4, 2017, 1%. I mean, it's that history is just not heard of. So in 2020, when we got 18%, and even in 18%, we were able to get it down to just under 10%. And then when we moved to self-funding, we were able to get back to that 0%. So we're hoping to continue to maintain that here with some employee education and some good claims management. All right, just a couple more slides left. Just an overview on payroll. We do payroll biweekly. Payroll is submitted by the department head. It all comes to HR. We have two individuals that rotate the HR review. They take it through the lens of policy and make sure that everyone is submitting 40 hours per week or whatever their shifts are, and they ensure accuracy from that level. Then it goes to finance, and finance looks at it at another lens. So there should be 3 checks before 3 people looking at it before it gets processed. And then the funds are direct deposited every other Friday. ACA is the Affordable Care Act, and there's lots of regulations related to that. And so when we do our biweekly processing for payroll, we also look at LTEs and part-time employees in a different lens because we need to ensure that they stay below the threshold consistently to not earn benefits. Because we have a very tight budget and we want to make sure that we don't accidentally approve hours above the ACA threshold to allow part-time or LTE employees to earn benefits. And so we stay, we're constantly monitoring that and working with department heads. We also have a contract with a gentleman by the name of Dustin Thompson with Keeping Safety Simple. He's been a huge help for us at the county level, but also really instrumental in the highway. We share him from the highway and the courthouse. He's with the highway about 5 days a month and with the courthouse about 6 days a month, and offers guidance in the area, in lots of areas from safety, but a lot of training. He also is here for highway safety days and helps with all of their training. And we do a quarterly review with him and DOA too, to stay on top of some of the initiatives that he has here at the county. He's been instrumental in helping us with policy as well related to safety. We have 3 work groups, one at the highway, one at the courthouse, and one at the sheriff's department. We also have an initiative that he's helping us with. It's called Spotlight Videos. And if you guys go out to the employee portal, I think there's also a county board section, and there's a link that'll take you to what's called Spotlight Videos. And it's a slow, but it's coming along. We have all of DHS, we have the jail, and we have telecommunications, so 911, and highways up next. And so what we did is we started with this initiative, and there's kind of 3 reasons that we have these short videos that display these departments. And our hope is to grow and have all of the departments with these videos. And it's to, 1, share some information with potential applicants. So it's when you go out to Facebook, it's been a very successful way for us to advertise our open positions. What grabs people's eyes is movement and videos. And so this is one of the ways for us to kind of try to grab people's attention to see what the positions are at the county. But we also heard through our surveys that employees want to know what other departments do. And so it's an opportunity for them, coworkers, to look and see what others are doing. And also for the public and for our county board supervisors, if you want to go out and kind of watch some of those videos, the ones that are out there are completed. Like I said, our DHS, a couple in the sheriff's department, and now we're working on highway. And Dustin is great with videos. So that's why he's helping us with those. Workers' compensation can be a large budget item. This slide has been updated every year. A couple things I want to point out because there's a lot of numbers up there. So we are self-funded. It's the only time I've worked in my career where the work comp was self-funded. But it has a similar process as health insurance. So we have some level of insurance that's called stop loss, or what we call it is self-insured retention, SIR. And so we have an amount that after $550,000, it would cover. And so what you see up here across the history, so if you look at on the right side of the screen from 2016 all the way to year to date, you'll see what our budget is. So our budget for 16 through 2022 is that top line. You'll see on the budget actual, in 2016 was the only year so far we've went over budget by $68,000 and some odd cents there. Otherwise, we're typically under budget. And when I came to the county in 2015, we had a lot of really serious injuries that put us over budget. And I think around the same time, our county or our highway commissioner also became really involved in helping with safety initiatives, as well as Dustin. And so we saw some really big impact and dropping of these claims. And so you'll see that it started to come in quite significantly lower than what was budgeted. And so what you're going to see as total paid, so the reason that that's different from the actual budget is the budget actual is what happened within that budget year. Total paid means that it was paid out based on a claim that occurred in that year. So all like I'm going to use 2016, for example. That $468,000 wasn't from all injuries that occurred in 2016. Those also were from accumulative injuries that have happened for the last several years, all paid in that budget cycle. But 207 was paid because of injuries in 2016. So that's a new line that we haven't brought forward before that Joanna and our department put together. The next line, set aside dollars, those are there because right now, as of today, or as of May, that's what our provider has set aside that they anticipate we might still have to pay because of a claim in that year. So in 2016, we still have somebody who had an injury that they think we might still have to pay out $21,764.70. Nobody in 2019 or 18 and 17, and then you'll see the rest of those dollars. Unfortunately, the reason for 2022 is we had a very serious injury at the highway where somebody was injured, had a head injury, and is paralyzed at this point in time from the nipples down. And so we know that we're going to have some long-term issues with that claim. And so we've been working with that gentleman and with the highway department because of that. But that's what that amount is. You'll also see, and you can look at this later, I'm not going to go through all the recordable injuries, but those are what is recordable by law, the number of days lost, and then the number of days restricted. Maybe they came back to work, but they had to work in a light-duty job. And then you'll see at the notes below, those are the different claims that are still open in those years. Our goal is to close claims. So Joanna is working diligently always with WMIC. She meets with them once a month to try and get some claims closed. All right, any questions on work comp? All right, like I said earlier, we are currently, our current contract for WPPA goes through the end of this year. It covers field services, which includes patrol and investigators. We have 24 FTEs within that contract. We do a traditional collective bargaining process. The last contract was ratified on March 2nd of 2020, and we're going to start contract negotiations here this summer. And then it lists all the different number of employees that are general municipal employees, but still in field services. So we have 6 reserve officers, 3 sergeants, and 2 lieutenants. These are some of the examples of all the laws that we navigate and have expertise on in our department. Or if we don't have expertise, we have resources to get questions answered. So those are all the different laws and regs that we deal with. One thing that we thought would be helpful is to also articulate how new positions are requested and approved. And so department heads, they can do this during the annual budget process, which is what we're going through right now, or mid-year requests. And so if it's during the annual budget process, it's triggered by the budget letter that goes out by the county administrator. There's a deadline for them to submit those requests, and then it gets built into the budget for the following year so that that employee, if approved, has an effective date of January 1 of the new budget year. And those resolutions for anyone who is part of the budget process come in August. So that's what you're going to be getting brought forward next month. If it's a mid-year request, the same process for requesting the new position is in play, except for the timing. It could be at any time throughout the year. And then the start date of a mid-year request is per the resolution and the agreement what's approved by the county board. So it could be the middle of the year, it could be at a different time of the year. All right. The next slide is really a precursor to me talking about some turnover data. We bring turnover data to the county board every 2 years during a county board orientation. And after doing it the first year, or maybe 2, we decided to put this slide together. And the reason for this is sometimes when we put turnover data together, and turnover is a great example where data can sometimes be misleading because we're pulling information out of our system. So one of the examples I wanted to show you is Springbrook is our HRIS system. It's really more of our budget and accounting system, but we use it as our HR tool as well. And so we had 96 new employees, for example, in 2015. 32 employees were terminated in 2015. If we took the data, it's strictly based on what our HRIS system told us when we ran some reports, that would tell us to tell you that we had a 33% turnover in new employees once we calculated it, if there was no more research done on that data. But what happened is when I dug into these numbers in 2015, 17 of those new and terminated employees in 2015 were interns and seasonal employees. And so they are already, we know when they're starting that they're going to turn over. And so there could be an argument that they should get pulled out or at least be transparent as we're providing data. 4 of those 32 that terminated actually didn't terminate at all. They changed status from LTE to full-time, but because of how our system manages those employee statuses, If I went to looked into the data more to make sure that it was an actual factual, we would have again overstated how many people actually terminated. Another thing that I was able to find out is 2 of those new employees only had a new employee number that was created in the system. So they weren't even new employees. And so it's really important for us to make sure that when we provide the county data, the county board data, or employees or department heads data, that we're looking into it. And I think I could say I'm pretty proud of our DOA team and Lori and Randy and everyone. We're always making sure that the information is dug into and that it's transparent and that you see all of these nuances. So the next several slides, I won't just tell you what a turnover number is, I'll tell you kind of where that data came from. So what really would have happened once we looked at this is we had 94 new employees, 17 were interns or seasonals. So 9 of the 94 new employees hired would have resulted in a 10% turnover rate, not 33%. So again, it just kind of illustrates how important it is to look at the data before providing those percentages. So 2020 turnover, up here on the screen, will show you that we had 78 employees who separated in 2020. And then why? So 37% resigned, 14 were seasonal. Sorry, not 37%. 37 resigned, 14 were seasonal, 10 retired, 7 involuntary, and so on. Something that was different when I put this data together is I've never had a layoff that we've had to communicate before in the data. This is not something that's common for Chippewa County, but we did have a public health.
There once was a ship that put to sea, and the name of the ship was the Billy O.T. The winds blew harder down below my boat.
All right. Sorry, I couldn't push through that one. Public health layoff, and then also due to we had 3 temps that came in 2020 due to COVID, and then we also had the COVID trial. So we had several others as well. So those are the different variations of why people left. That equated to an 18.4% turnover rate. If we remove the seasonals, it's 14.4. And then we also illustrate there that we had 72 public recruitments conducted. That doesn't mean that we filled 72 positions, but sometimes you have to recruit multiple times to fill a position. And that tends to happen a lot in, we had some experience in facilities. We struggled in a couple areas there over the years. LTEs and the highway, those tended to be some areas that we struggle with recruitment. We have to run multiples. Then we dug down the data a little bit further. So for just retirees, we had 10, and then these are the different departments that they came from. For voluntary resignations, we had 37. These are the departments that they came from, and that's in order, top to bottom. Tracy had a great recommendation to add pie charts or some type of charts. So like I think Todd mentioned his first time putting bar charts together for you last time. This was my first time with a pie chart.
I couldn't do that.
This is the next year then. So that last couple slides was 2020. This is 2021. So I'm not going to go through. I'll just go straight down to turnover rate of 17.8. Not including seasonals, it was 10.1, so even lower in 2021. And then we had 10 less recruitments in 2021 of 62. Then if we break that down a little further, retirees were 11, and then that was the breakdown of departments. And then I did not put a slide in there on resignations. Sorry about that, I missed that. All right, this next slide just gives you an overview since 2011. So you can see from employees who had 0 to 5 years experience, 6 to 10 years of experience here, or longevity with the county, all the way through 21 plus. And what this really illustrated when we started putting this and looking at this data is that from 0 to 5 years is the highest percent of employees turning over. And when we dug into that data even more, we were able to see that in 2020, of that 56, that of 0 to 5, 34 were less than a year. So out of that 56 that turned over from 0 to 5 years, 40 were less than a year. In 2021, of the 60 that turned over that had 0 to 5 years, 31 were less than a year. And so what that's illustrating to us is that we have an issue in that first year of employment. And when we really identified this, our office, the previous HR generalist that does onboarding, really put some strong effort into training our department heads and really revamping our orientation. Because the goal when you have somebody onboarded is to acclimate them and to get them excited about their team and to not isolate them from the old employees or the veteran employees and making the new employees. And so there was a lot of initiatives. The highway put a committee or a work group together to help with onboarding and to help onboard employees to make them feel part of the team faster. Because if they're leaving that short on, it's usually a gap in that onboarding and making them feel part of the team. And so there's been a lot of work done here. That's when our our onboarding survey started, was to help with this because we saw this data. It is common in a lot of organizations, so it's not just isolated to Chippewa County. But it's if you can get them to that 5-year mark, hopefully we've got them. So that's always the goal. Hopefully we'll keep them if they stay that long. The other thing that we look at every year is what's called the BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we beat the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the area of government sectors every year that I've ever put this presentation together. So when we look at 2020, on this report, 2020, 18.4%. And remember, that includes interns and seasonals. It is 18 to 36% month over month in 2020. So we definitely are still beating some of those numbers. One thing I did not put together, but I can tell you just because I'm aware, we do have a high turnover right now. And so we are experiencing that in several areas, just like a lot of other departments, or organizations are. And it is definitely going to be higher in 2022 if we stay on the same trend that we are now. And so I do expect that to go up in 2022. Our new employee, Christy, who handles all of this, it's been a whirlwind for her to start in October during onboarding and then have this recruitment turnover issue within the community and in the world, really. So it's been hard to keep up, definitely. Okay. Any questions? Talk too much.
Supervisor Steele.
You still have to fill out a 7-page application to volunteer for the county.
I don't know how many pages it is, but yes, you have to fill out an application to volunteer.
And they do a background check on you.
It only for those that it's required. So if you're going to work in human services or public health, or if you're going to have, you're going to deal with potentially going into homes, then yes, we have to do what's called a bid, and then we have to do a caregiver background check.
I guess a lot of people have talked to me about volunteering and doing some work in the county board. They're loggers, they got machinery.
Yep.
They go up and do it for them. But they can't unless they fill out this
Correct.
huge volunteer application.
Larry, do you know how many pages it is?
I think it's 7.
It is 7? So he equally loves the volunteer process.
I remember that from 4 years ago, 7.
Yeah.
I think that's a little overkill.
It has where they've worked. It has all of their personal information. I have to look at exactly what it is to see if there's anything that we can cut. I assume that we already looked at it and tried to do that. It's really from a liability standpoint. It's really unsafe for us. I mean, and you gave the great department that it is probably the most unsafe in. It's when you're using chainsaws and all the different things that they use in land conservation. It's important to make sure that we have that information. They're also going to be covered under our liability insurance. So there's those types of things that we're looking at. We want to make sure that they also agree and sign off on the volunteer policy because they're not being paid, so we don't have any wage and hour claims. So we tried to make it as easy as possible. We put it in a packet. We make it so that they can handwrite it. They don't have to fill it out online. So we tried to minimize it and work with those departments that have volunteers to make it easy. But you're right, they still have to do it.
What is the current employee count?
I think it was 402, if I remember.
Yeah.
Is that what it said?
Yeah.
Okay, 402.
Thank you.
That was as of June 1st. It's probably changed since then. But it's up, it ebbs and flows.
There's somebody else up there.
Supervisor Miller.
Yeah, new Supervisor Mueller, I don't know if I've ever met you. But anyway, my question refers to, do you have any, is there any particular department you're experiencing a higher rate of turnover than anywhere else? Is one particular?
Not one. We have turnover issues in the jail and in 911, so telecommunications. It's 24/7. The second shift is very difficult. It's a very different, different market right now where people don't want to work those shifts. We fill them just as fast as we turn them over. Another department is highway. The highway is losing it to the private sector right now due to pay. Those are the three I would say stand out to me.
That's kind of what I would have expected, I guess. Just, thank you.
Okay, Buck?
I have a hard time with this, and I don't want to beat it to death, but I know there's a county bordering our north, okay, that has an organization, nonprofit, that does a lot of things in the environment, helping in the county land and stuff. And they're all, they hire teams of students from high school, and they have college kids as crew leaders, and then they have teachers or instructors as the overall. None of those people are paid directly by this nonprofit. They're all employees of the county. And the nonprofit reimburses the county every payday what the county pays them. And I would hate to have to try and implement something like that in Chippewa County with what we've got going here. But that's happened for years and years and years in Rusk County. So, I sometimes I think we go way beyond. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All righty. After, okay. After being postponed many times, we are going to get our training from Todd Pauls. Putting all levity aside, this is probably one of the most important sections that you will receive training in your career.
Point of time. Mr. Chair, I know it's going to be a long meeting. Can we take a short recess before he starts? I don't want to delay you any further, but I know there's a couple of us that already left to go to the bathroom.
Good call. I was wondering whether I should do that before this one or after. So you want, all right. So seeing none, we will take a 5-minute break. Stretch and whatever other amenities. And then postpone you again.
Right.
That's like 5.
Just do everything.
He hasn't signed anything.
That organization's the WRA.
I don't think.
Jerry Carroll pretty much had.
Center one slightly, and the west one.
He's the retired warden up there. His wife was the head of the conservation department.
Are we still on?
But
Yeah, it's a great program.
Did you ever question answers? Has that been like that?
Thanks, you.
We're a little,
Jim, I did not.
that's the key word because,
I did not specifically.
no, I say that's the key. Happy medium because the bottom line is they've been doing this for years. They haven't had very few.
But I did show it to Matt. Right.
Yeah.
But it is, it takes all the counties and you can
Does data like the cost
I took notes in here.
that they spend each county
Technology, repetition, second one,
per
much
capita,
detail, read.
how much they spend on law enforcement, and how much, and you can pick, you can break each county, and then it brings you up the bar chart.
No problem. I can make it as short as you want, Glenn. Yeah, I can just say, hey, have materials. You guys have any questions? Come on down.
Somebody inside for storage, the university or whatever developed. Yeah,
Probably. I imagine that's what they put it out in first, was probably the iPhones or whatever.
Not much.
I was wondering, how difficult to raise,
Yeah,
besides something like that? I didn't look at it.
See what happens.
Leave it just go.
In the bags, it's a very, very, very bad. You know, if I get down like this, I can get in there. But you know, by the time you run.
Your pack. You guys created.
okay. No, because that'd be interesting to see the brief.
Yeah,
It's good.
Then I saw the center one.
I can't take 7 days
I'm not sure.
law enforcement,
Yeah.
Chippewa County.
I have to.
Really?
Well, and then the mileage,
Mileage, yeah. They go all the way.
Wait till you get there.
It's down to Neil's.
95, it's 95% humidity.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just.
It's just prime for you.
And see, like for Matt, he can basically. I'm gonna get some water.
I used to go out on my way to thank the officers.
He's talking about.
There you can have Really?
Yeah.
Have you got some?
I heard it.
Don't get it, because I own the next house above it.
I gotta work on.
Years ago for 20 years.
Yeah, Margaret was different. It's way different than.
We had a whole.
It was online for 15 years. Get a bid on it. I don't think there was. I looked at it.
I had off.
Now you got a story.
I think the market in Stanley. 3 years ago. Totally different. Same.
Name on me. I think I will get up and stretch.
Plumb bobs over.
Like I said, I'm only 7.
Including.
But I still.
And I thought that was pretty good.
How are you?
Where they run the numbers.
Well, some moms lived up there.
Well, I know the Bears. Is that a 12? They jumped at the green belt.
yeah, GREAT. Then you can see the county.
You're on planning and zoning.
Oh, perfect.
Did you get the nameless letter?
You guys saw it.
What a VRBO 20.
Our days out.
Close on it.
I just came up with that. Trying to figure it out.
Corn dip.
What they think that they
What are they talking about?
I was just gonna, yeah,
That's what I've save every third page.
carbon copy, Lake Association.
I think I should have.
No anything.
So why are they?
That don't have a problem. A VRBO up in Holcomb, rental property.
Revenue is not my thing.
Saying they did some stuff.
Right.
Boathouse that are not in compliance.
Your state highway needs. County.
You know, now you return address. Yeah. Just, they didn't do it just okay. You guys ever heard me playing something back in
It's just a fun person sitting around doing something. Start playing with that. It's a free app, yeah. It's announced by the university.
Oh, that just came to get my mailbox.
It'll be done by 10.
That's what
I need to be done by 10.
They said at that point it was only for Apple, but they might have got.
Okay, I think we're 5 minutes early. Okay, can we start heading?
Something like that. $6 in my desk.
The gavel is.
Time's up.
It's all again.
Hey. Pretty quiet little guy.
I know.
Okay. Okay, Todd,
Are we really doing this?
take it away. Sure.
Really happening.
You know, I was thinking tonight I was going to get up here and I was going to say, I know we've all suffered together through all these multiple delays in the open meetings law and open records law training, and that the wait is over and I'm here to ease your pain. But I don't think that's absolutely true, because once again, I follow too long presentation. I feel like I'm going to be the only one in pain here tonight. But so there's a lot of information in the packet. As you can see, there's a lot of slides. I'm not going to go through every single one. I've decided I want to get through the basics to make sure that you folks can do your job properly. There are a few more complicated scenarios in there with regards to the open meetings law that don't happen all that often. That's there for you to look at. And if you have any follow-up questions after the training tonight, I'm always willing to sit down and talk with you and work through those questions. So let's get to it here so we can get you folks out of here tonight. Let's start. We're going to start with the open meetings law. As you can see, the open meetings law is under section 19.81 of the Wisconsin statutes. And the purpose of the open meetings law is to give the public the fullest and most complete information concerning the affairs of government. And it requires that all meetings of all state and local government bodies be publicly held in places reasonably accessible to members of the public and be open to all citizens at all times unless the law specifically provides otherwise. The law also states, and this is important, that it's to be liberally construed to carry out the goal of transparency in government. So that's the policy behind the law, to make sure that everyone has as much access as possible. So the scope of the law, who does the law apply to? As you can see, it applies to a state or local agency, board, commission, committee, council, department, or public body, corporate, and public and politic created by constitution, statute, ordinance, rule, or order. So then in our case, it applies to the county and its board of supervisors, committees, and all the other subunits. So you know who it applies to, what types of meetings are covered. The way the statute defines a meeting is a convening of members of a governmental body for the purpose of exercising the responsibilities, authority, power, or duties delegated to or vested in the body. If one half or more of the members of a governmental body are present, the meeting is rebuttably presumed to be for the purpose of exercising the responsibilities, authority, power, or duties delegated to or vested in the body. So the law applies whenever there's a meeting, and that's what the definition of the meeting is under the law. That's kind of a mouthful. So we're going to break that down a little bit. The main significance of falling within the definition of a meeting under the law is that it triggers the requirement that the public be given notice of the meeting so that the public can monitor the activities of government. Now, in most cases, the notice required is 24 hours under normal circumstances. However, in the case of emergencies, the law does allow for less notice, but no less than 2 hours notice if good cause is shown. So we obviously follow the rule here that to provide 24 hours notice. In my time here, I can't recall ever having held a meeting without 24 hours notice. So what type of meetings are covered? As I mentioned, the definition of a meeting is kind of convoluted. So that's where the courts have stepped in to provide us some direction. Specifically, the Supreme Court has interpreted the statutory definition through case law to provide guidance on how to determine when a meeting occurs under the law. And they've developed what's known as the Showers test, which is named after the last name of the defendant in the case. According to the Showers test, a meeting occurs whenever essentially three things are all present. They all have to be there. One, the members of the governmental body are convening. They're convening for the purpose for the members convening is to engage in governmental business, and that can take the form of discussion, collective decision, or informational gathering. And the number of members convening is sufficient to determine the body's course of action. So recapping that, essentially, if you have any questions in your mind, you should be asking yourself two questions. Test is two questions, essentially. What is the purpose of the members convening? Is it governmental business? And how many members of the body are convening? Is there a quorum present? And of course, the test is fact-specific in each circumstance, and as I mentioned, all the elements need to be there for a meeting to have occurred under the law. So if that seems a little still kind of convoluted, I want to break it down. I want to break that test down even further. And specifically, I want to talk about the numbers present requirement. And this is where it gets into the weeds a little bit. But it's critical to remember that the power to control a body's course of action can refer either to the affirmative power to pass a proposal or the negative power to defeat a proposal, the latter being referred to as a negative quorum. The number of members present requirements, it's easy enough for us to determine if we're looking at it from the perspective of the power to pass a proposal. For example, if the body has 5 members, it takes 3 members convening to constitute a simple majority or quorum that's required for passage of a proposal. However, a meeting can also occur in gatherings that are smaller than a majority, and in particular, gatherings of members such that if they acted in concert, they could block the passage of an item. For example, a negative quorum arises when an item requires a supermajority, 2/3 majority, in order to be passed or approved. So if more than 1/3 of the members of such a body gather and discuss the item, they would be engaging in a meeting under the open meetings laws. Such a meeting would be illegal if it's not preceded by proper notice. And I tried to think of the best example I could. It's a very simplified example, but my example would be, for example, if Joe and Jane supervisor are members of a 5-member committee. Let's just say that the committee has a business item on an upcoming meeting agenda that requires 2/3 vote to approve. Let's also say that Joe and Jane, supervisor, meet before the actual meeting about the agenda item, and they both agree that they're going to vote against the agenda item. It's possible that their gathering could constitute a meeting, but all that would depend on how they actually voted at the scheduled meeting. So it's very fact-specific. It really depends on what actually occurs at the actual meeting. If they did vote against it, it could be found that their gathering between the two of them actually constitute a meeting that's not properly noticed under the open meetings law. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because I know that it's hard to wrap your head around that. I know I struggle with that. I have to constantly look back at that. And again, it's real fact specific, so it really depends on the circumstances.
Todd, and that example, so the 2/3 vote is a key factor as to whether that.
It usually is, because the negative quorum can involve less than, less than a quorum. So, for example, if you've got a 5-member committee, normally with a majority, you would only need 3 votes to pass. But if it's a 2/3 majority, you would need 4.
Yep.
And in the example I gave, if they had conspired essentially to vote against it, they could defeat it, you would not be able to get the 4 votes to pass. So. Is that it?
Yep, that's it. That's like I say, it's kind of tricky when you start looking at both the positive and then the negative effect, because it's different.
And I also wanted to touch upon the interplay between electronic mail and meetings. Remember that meetings can occur not only in person under the law, but also using email or the phone or in a letter to somebody. It all depends on the circumstances. Given that emails become such a prevalent method of communication, it's important that we all understand how corresponding in that medium can constitute a meeting. For example, I can't emphasize enough that the reply all and forward feature of email make it especially troublesome. One of the specific dangers in using emails as a medium is the creation of what's called a walking quorum. And as you can see, a walking quorum is a series of gatherings among separate groups of members of a governmental body, each less than quorum size, who agree tacitly or explicitly to act uniformly in sufficient number to reach a quorum. And the critical element of a walking quorum is an implied or express agreement to act uniformly. And the biggest problem with walking quorums is the danger that a walking quorum produces a predetermined outcome and renders the meeting essentially a formality. So essentially there's 3 elements. There's a series of gatherings of separate groups that are each less than quorum size. And there's a purpose in those communications to engage in governmental business. And there also has to be shown that there's some agreement between the parties. It doesn't have to be expressed, it doesn't have to be in writing. It can be implied that those individuals are going to act uniformly in sufficient number to reach a quorum. So with emails and sending, if one person sends an email to another individual, and that person then passes on that email, and then the next person replies to everybody, you've got a whole group of supervisors now involved. And depending what's been discussed, you may have a quorum of a committee or the county board. And so you have to be extremely careful. I highly advise against, and I think we put it in all communications that go to the board that indicates you are responding to this do not reply all. So, so that's a walking quorum. Another item I wanted to touch on is closed sessions. As you know, the purpose of the open meetings law is to permit the public the fullest and most complete information concerning the affairs of government. So the presumption is that government meetings are open to the public. However, the legislature has carved out 11 specific narrowly construed exceptions to the open session requirement, which allows those items to be discussed in closed session. And another important point is that if an exception is invoked by the body, it needs to be specifically identified on the agenda that it's noticed to the public, along with a description of that agenda item that will be discussed in this session. And the reason for that is so that the public has some way of knowing, at least in a general fashion, what is the government discussing behind closed doors. They have to at least have an idea of what's being discussed. Otherwise, how can they determine whether it should be behind closed doors or not? I've provided all the exceptions that apply to counties in your material, so you can feel free to review those as you wish. But I'm going to touch on just the ones that are most frequently invoked at the county level with respect to the county board and committees business in Chippewa County. There's 7 main closed session exceptions that apply to counties. And of those 7, most frequently invoked exceptions here in Chippewa County that, through my experience in meetings, are the one under 19.851C, which is regarding employment, 1985-1E, which is the conducting of business with competitive or bargaining implications, and 1G, which is conferring with legal counsel with respect to litigation. So specifically with regards to the employment exception, that involves, I'm going to skip those two. Considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. By way of example, and I think if my memory serves correctly, I think the executive committee has employed that exception, and maybe the board too, in the past to discuss the county administrator's performance evaluation. So that's where that one's come into play. We don't see that one real frequently. The second one is conducting business with competitive or bargaining implications, and this is probably the most common one. As you can see, it's deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And where I've seen this most is in my work with the Economic Development Committee. The exceptions invoked frequently by the committee and the board to discuss and make decisions about specific economic development projects that the county's directly involved in and that involve the purchase or sale of property. And then the third one, which is also from time to time occurs, and I think we've probably already experienced this one, is conferring with legal counsel with respect to litigation. And this one is pretty self-explanatory. Anytime the county's involved or likely to be involved in litigation, this exception's invoked so that the board or a committee can confer with its attorney or attorneys on legal strategy. not going to go over that one. So shifting from the exceptions, who may attend, that's another item, is who may attend closed sessions. In general, the open meetings law gives wide discretion to a governmental body to admit to a closed session anyone whose presence the body determines is necessary for the consideration of the matter that is the subject of the meeting. And I believe we touched on this in the parliamentary procedure training, but there's been a fairly recent change to our county board rules and our ordinances that requires three things. One is that any motion that goes into closed session must include the names of all individuals who will be allowed to attend the closed session. And prior to going into the closed session, the chair must announce in open session the names of those individuals who will be allowed to attend. And then also the minutes from the closed session need to include the names of those individuals in attendance. And then a couple of the other general requirements for closed session minutes are that they include any motions and votes that were taken on the motions in closed session, and that the closed session minutes shall remain confidential until there is no longer a need for them to remain confidential. And as you can see, this just shows you how that change is codified in our ordinances. Oops, I hit something. I hit the wrong button. I hit the down button.
Oh, it's
I'm button happy here. So another item is voting in closed session. Any motion and vote that's to be taken in closed session or vote to be taken based on the closed session should be an open session unless doing so would compromise the need for the closed session. And some examples of where voting in open session might compromise the need for a closed session would be if the body is conferring with legal counsel on litigation strategy. Any motion or vote on that subject in open session could jeopardize the county's or the body's position in legal proceedings that may be involved in. So it's important that that motion and vote remain in closed session. This is a big one. Confidentiality of items discussed in closed session. This is the kind of the final consideration with regards to closed sessions. And like I said, it's a big one. And this seems like it would be common sense, but as there's a saying, I believe that, common sense isn't that common. So, it's important that members and all others who participate in a closed session avoid discussing or disclosing the matters addressed in closed session to anyone who's not a member of the body or otherwise entitled to access the information. And why is that? There's three real main reasons. One, we're dealing with sensitive matters in closed session. There's 13 statutory exceptions that allow government bodies to meet in closed session, and all of them involve matters of a sensitive nature. The other thing is, secondly, it allows the members to speak freely and responsibly on those sensitive issues. In order to be to have good governance, you need to be able to completely and honestly communicate among the members. And then finally, discussion of closed session matters outside of closed session. It's not in and of itself a violation of open meeting law, but by doing so, you could be impacting a pending legal proceeding of which the county is a party to, or you may violate other laws depending on the nature of the information disclosed. and those are too many to list here, but I've listed, for example, potentially the FMLA or potentially privacy laws, depending on what you're discussing in closed session. The remaining slides covering penalties and enforcement provisions are in your packet. I'm not going to go into detail about enforcement of the open meetings law, other than to say that actions for violations of the open meetings law can be brought by either the DA, the district attorney on behalf of the state, or they can be brought by members of the public themselves. That is all I have for now on open meetings. I want to switch to open records law with the short amount of time that we have left here. I'm not going to cover every slide that's in your materials, but they're there for your reference. There's just a few primary areas that I want to cover. So the public records law starts under Section 1921 of the Wisconsin statutes. And much like the open meetings law, the public policy and purpose of the open records law recognizes that all persons are entitled to the greatest possible information regarding the affairs of government and the official acts of those officers, employees who represent them. And again, for that reason, the open records law is construed in favor of disclosure. So remember that anytime that there may be an open records claim filed against the county, the court is going to construe that in favor of disclosure. The law is construed in favor of disclosure. So there's the idea is that, again, that the public, it's the transparency of government that the court is going to look at in terms of if there's an ambiguous provision of the open records law, they're going to construe it in favor of transparency. So what is a record? It's any material on which written, drawn, printed, spoken, visual, or electromagnetic information is recorded or preserved, regardless of physical form or characteristics, which has been created or is being kept by an authority. And then it lists all the different things that could constitute a record. So given the legislature has put a high priority on the disclosure of government records, it's not surprising that the definition of a record under the law is extremely broad. And so we know what a record is. The records law also tells us what is not a record. Those things would include drafts, notes, preliminary documents, purely personal property, and trade secrets as they're defined under the law. But just keeping in mind that the definition of these items is very fact-specific in each circumstance. For example, you and I may look at what a note is. What you and I consider to be a note, the law may consider something very different. So don't just assume because you believe it a note, it isn't going to be considered a record. There's case law on this, and it's all fact specific. Who must keep a record? This slide shows that under the public records law, you as elected officials are considered to be an authority that is subject to the law if you have custody of a record. And with this slide, it shows a list of things that may or may not be considered records depending on the content. And in this case, I'm going to focus on supervisors' use or misuse, for that matter, of email simply because it's the type of record that's by far requested most in open records request, and which causes us as staff incredible amount of time often to gather records when emails are requested. It's a laborious process. And it can also lead to potential liability for the county. So first of all, you've all been given a county email account. And I can't stress enough how you please use it for conducting county business. Please do not use your personal emails accounts for county business. That makes things very complicated. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. I can't emphasize that enough. If you take nothing else away from the training, please remember that. One reason is that if you're using a personal account, email account to send and receive emails involving county business and records, and a records request is made, a search of your personal account for the records request may be required. A second reason is that all emails to and from your county account are archived and maintained by IT. So in the event there is a records request, the archive can be easily searched to respond to a records request. On the other hand, if you're using a personal email account, you're required to maintain and retain that record. And I'd venture a guess that it'd be much more difficult for each of you to search your personal accounts for emails involving county business. You don't have a built-in archive system, probably like IT does for emails. Always remember that the determining factor of whether emails, and this is important, whether the determining factor whether emails, calls, documents, et cetera, that are on private accounts or records that are subject to disclosure depends on the content of the record. It doesn't matter where it's found, the format it's in, or the medium. It's what is in the content. Is there anything about conducting government business that's within that email? So if the content does involve conducting government business, it's a record that may be subject to disclosure. Another touchy area is social media. The same guidelines apply for social media. I would strongly urge you to reserve your use of social media purely for personal uses and not for government business. As posts on those accounts may be records subject to disclosure as well. And I'm not going to go through it, but I did include an example involving a Google Groups website created by a town chairman that was the subject of an informal opinion of the Attorney General. So I encourage you to review that. Who can request a record? As it indicates on the slide, the requester need not state the purpose of the request. The requester need not identify him or herself. Their motive isn't relevant, but the context is appropriately considered. And another important, the biggest one there in my mind is that purpose of their request is irrelevant. We can't ask them why they're requesting a record. That's not our concern, and we're not allowed to ask them. And again, you can't actually ask them to identify themselves. You need to have an ability to, in today's day and age, you need to have an email address. We can't actually ask them for who they are. Makes things more difficult, but that's what the law says. Another important one is that a written request or form is not required. It can be done via a phone call. There's no magic words that are required, as long as it reasonably describes the information or record requested. It needs to be reasonably specific as to the time and subject matter. And the reason that is that the custodian should not have to guess what the record requester wants. Does the record requested exist? It's important to understand that only records that exist at the time of the request have to be produced. In other words, the authority isn't required to create a new record in order to respond to the request. We see this quite a bit. We'll have people who will request essentially information, but the information they're seeking doesn't actually exist in a record that the county has within its custody. County in that situation isn't required to find the information they're looking for and put it in a document. The document's there, we're required to. There are situations where it's a very simple informational request, and we will do that. We will create a record for them. But in other instances, it becomes extremely cumbersome, and the county's not legally required to do it. Just some practical tips as we finish up here. What I wanted to leave you with is I would strongly encourage that whenever you can, and I know this is not 100% practical, but it would be my dream that you folks would engage in governmental business at meetings, actually agenda notice meetings, and not in email, not in phone calls, not in person outside of a meeting. But I know that isn't going to happen. I just strongly suggest that you be very aware of the methods that you're communicating by, and you follow the advice that I've given you in terms of making sure if you're sending emails, you're not sending emails to a number of individuals. That's where we get into the situation. As soon as someone hits reply to all, we got a potential situation on our hands that could easily have been avoided. So a lot of it's common sense, but you just always need to be very cognizant of how you're communicating and who you're communicating with. And the other thing is that open records requests, like I said, are just extremely burdensome for staff to complete. It's with the advent of email, we've only seen our requests increase, and the individual requests themselves are larger and larger. So anytime we can avoid creating a public record, I'm all for that. Does anybody have any questions at all? Again, like I said, always feel free to pop down to our office. Yeah, I'll get Ron. Jim Sherman and I are, one of us is usually in the office. I really encourage you to come to our office, and I'll do my best to answer your questions or provide you some kind of guidance. So there's a lot to know, and I've just touched on the basics here. So if anything ever comes up, just contact us. That's what we're there for. Supervisor McGill?
So in regards to closed session minutes, who actually decides when they are no longer confidential or would?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, we've talked a lot about that. And what we've started to do is that, I'm speaking from how it's occurred in my background. Usually in economic development, we'll have a closed session involving the purchase or sale of property. And generally, those items, if we have an agreement that's being voted, we'll vote in closed session, because there's still a continuing need for the closed session until the parties actually execute the agreement. The party could always back out and not sign the agreement, even though it's been approved. We've been doing a lot of thinking about that, and now what we're doing is I'm keeping track of each time we go into closed session, and every time we end up executing one of those agreements, I'm going back to Lisa, who is the clerk, and making sure that she puts those closed session minutes on the agenda for the next general meetings, regular meetings, so that they can be approved. And once they're approved, they're at that point, they're no longer, they're just open to disclosure.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
We're done. Okay. Update on national opioid settlement and securitization of funds. Randy.
I know you're very sad, but that's the end of the orientation for the county board. If you wanted some more, if you want some more information, please let us know. We've got plenty of department heads. But appreciate your patience and all that. We knew going into with having such a large turnover on the board that we needed to do a lot of orientation. So I know it can be kind of long, but we tried to give you the information that you needed to do your job successfully. That's always our goal. You guys have heard a lot about this. I learned a new word, securitization. Never heard that word before. And essentially what I'll get to this in a little bit, but in a second, but my memo that I send out to your letter, this is really the agreement with the distributors and Johnson & Johnson. And WCA heard a lot of questions about, is there a way to get your money up front? And that's really what the securitization is. It reminds me of the commercial, I want my money and I want it now. So it's really that concept of, is there an organization that would be available out there large enough in order to do this? There's a lot to this, obviously. So if we go to what Tracy has up right now, the first graphs on the left side, that's if we don't do the securitization. That is if we get paid out over the terms of the agreement. If you look at the bottom number next to the yellow there, that 1.5 million, thanks Tracy, that is the amount that Chippewa counties would receive over that time frame. We actually got about 1.9 million, but there was 20% of that went right to the lawyers. So that's the dollar amount. The yellow amount is what they're anticipating because of inflation that the dollars would be worth. So inflation obviously goes up. A dollar's not worth as much as today as it is tomorrow. I know we're all kind of living that right now, but that's the number for that. And then if you go up towards the top, you'll see there's a line on both of them. So the one on the left, that's how much we would receive in the first two payments. That's $175,855. So that's if we just went with the plan as is, don't try to do the securitization. And then the second graph, we'll walk through that, is basically the same thing except for this is the securitization. Obviously, we don't receive as much money because we're paying somebody, they're taking the risk essentially to take on this payments over years. So we don't receive as much money. So what they're anticipating we would receive is that next to that yellow number is 1.227. Then the yellow number is the dollars. The inflation number is 1,165,000. So it's essentially what they're saying in these graphs. If we did this, we'd lose about 132,900, or we'd receive about 89.8% of our funds. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky. If we're going to move forward and look at securitization, there's going to be other fees involved in that. So it's not going to be that number. There's two real factors that affect this. One is the interest rate. All this is determined at a 5.5% interest rate, but that can change depending on when they go out, because they're essentially doing bonding for this. So if that interest rate goes up, our numbers go down, right? I got that right? Yep.
4%. Every percent it goes up, 4% it goes down.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. Yeah. So let's say we went from 5.5% to 6.5%. Our 89.8 just dropped 4%. We don't know what that percent is going to be. We don't know what the fees are going to be. But one of the reasons I'm here tonight is because WCA wanted to know if we're still if we're just interested to see what those final numbers would be. Then we can just give them. We don't have to commit to anything because nothing would be final until it comes in front of the county board, obviously. But they just wanted to know if counties are interested, then they can put a better number together and then come back to the counties, and then we'd bring that back to the board, obviously. So unless I hear a lot of objections about that, I didn't think that was kind of a big deal. We don't have to commit to anything, and we kind of find the final numbers. To get into every detail on these graphs, essentially the numbers after the two lines on the right-hand side, if we went with the securitization is what they're saying, we'd get $806,000, $392 up front, essentially, the first two payments, which is a big difference than what we'd get under the other. But obviously you lose money as you're going down the graft. The reason for this is they feel Johnson & Johnson is secure. They're not saying to do anything with them, take their payments. It's a shorter number of years. I think it's 9 years, 8 or 9 years. The other ones are much longer. I think 16 years is what the number is. And they're not as secure. Their bond rating's not as high as what Johnson & Johnson's is. So they're really thinking that if we're going to do it, that's what we should do. Is there a right or wrong answer? I'm an administrative meeting every Monday with between 8 and 12 administrators. They're pretty much split right down the middle. So I don't think there's really, when we bring this to you guys, maybe we'll know more information. That interest rate's going to be a big deal. Those additional fees, I think, are going to be a big deal. So I think you probably have a clearer understanding once we get there. So is there any questions on this information or these graphs? And I know some county board members did attend the WCA. They had 3 trainings on this. I went to the first one, and I know Lori went to the first and last one, I believe. And she said the last one was kind of more informative because they kind of learned from their questions from the first 2 presentations. Any questions that I hope I got? Jason. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chair.
Out of curiosity, you talked about Johnson & Johnson. They're sustainable. That the other ones, the risk would be they'd file for bankruptcy and then the payments would disappear. Do we know what percentage of that number that we would get over time represents Johnson & Johnson's dollar amount? Like, what if that worst case scenario happened and those other companies filed for bankruptcy and then it goes in the courts and we could lose out on payments? What percentage of that dollar would it be? Do we have any idea what that is?
Yeah, so the Johnson & Johnson is not securitization at all. It's straight up payment.
Well, that's okay. That's not even in this graph. This is purely the ones that they are concerned about.
I think Lori's got it. Why don't you come up, Lori? You can.
Oh, on the blue column there, that's the Johnson &
Oh, that's
Johnson.
their union. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
so
I missed that.
Yep.
Oh,
We'll get the payments of $292,253.
And they're the same in both graphs.
Okay.
Yep. It's just the ones.
Good question.
green. That would have been those other distributors. It was Cardinal, McKesson, and
Better than me.
but there was 3 of them that they have. So Johnson & Johnson had a AA2 rating, AA3 rating, and the other 3 distributors had like a Baa2.
Oh.
The bond rating.
They're pretty bad.
Sorry, I totally missed it. It was broke out. I apologize.
No, that's fine. It is confusing. I got this, first time I got it, I couldn't figure it out at all, obviously, until I started hearing them try to explain it, but it's definitely confusing.
Go ahead, Bob.
Just confused me. I thought in the blue, the column all the way down to year 10 or 11, whatever it is, that's everything we're going to get, and it's going to add up to 200.
That's for Johnson & Johnson only.
Okay. But I thought I heard that's what we're going to get, period, the first payment.
No, that's from Johnson & Johnson, period. Just Johnson, not the other distributors.
Okay.
Yep. But it's over those years, and they're not recommending doing anything with them. You'd receive that over that time frame.
So in other words, we can securitization,
Yes,
the other ones, but not Johnson & Johnson.
correct. They're just not recommending them. They say they're so big that they're not planning on going bankrupt, or their bond rating's so high that they feel like they're pretty secure. The other ones they have a little question about. And the discussions on administration, between administrators were everything from, well, if they were going to go bankrupt, they already would have, right? Because they're going to just basically increase their costs and recoup this money through other drugs. To, well, yeah, but they're not real stable, and if they can't get bonding, they can't get loans, then they can't sustain, and they might not be able to continue. So it's kind of all over the board. I think getting those second numbers, if we know, a better idea what that interest rate's going to be, the idea of those other fees, I think would help for sure. So any other questions on this?
I have just one observation, because irregardless of which way we go, if we take the early payment settlement, if they file bankruptcy, it makes no difference anyway, because it goes to the bankruptcy court to determine what they're going to have to pay. So taking it early or taking the gamble to take it late really doesn't guarantee us those funds, because once it moves to the bankruptcy court, and if they're like most of the big companies, they're usually filed in the 3rd Federal District, which is very sympathetic to businesses. So, like say, whether we take it early or whether we take it late doesn't give us a guarantee where you're going to get it. And the bankruptcy court will have the final say if they decide to file bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's one point that's been really confusing to me, because the idea of securitization was to eliminate the bankruptcy, and that because they're taking on all the risk. But then when they're doing the presentation, they did talk about the bankruptcy. Do you have clarification on that at all, Lori?
No, I thought they were just talking about if those companies claim bankruptcy, because then we would get our money up front, and it'd be the investors of those would be the ones who would be at the potential loss and not.
Yeah, they did definitely say that, but I think the dollar amount's less or something, but we got to get more clarification.
Yeah, that's up in the air.
Yeah, I thought what I just stated was correct, that if the reason we're doing this is securitize, right? So we don't care if they go in bankruptcy, but there was maybe that was in the WCA Monday meeting, talked about that, but.
Residual column.
Huh?
Because what's happening with the securitization, they're only on the securitization of like 80% of all the funds that we expect.
Oh.
And then we're supposed to get those residual payments, and if they would happen to file bankruptcy, then those in the green column there, in that last green column, the residual line, those would go away if one of the companies would go away. Not all of it, but let's say a third or whatever proportionally.
Okay, that's clear, a little clearer. So we would get the big payment up front, though, if we do the securitization of the $806,000, and it would be the rest of it that would still be a question. I'll dig into that a little more, Chair, too, because that was a little confusing.
So under securitization, then lines, payments 1 and 2, we get that right up front. And again, everything below that line is what's really, we may or may not get.
Yeah, the way I understood it is if they do the bonding at 5.5%, that's what they're recommending if nobody has any issues, if that's the best way to.
And the Johnson column there, the blue or purple or whatever you want to call it, the blue line, they feel really confident because of the size of the company.
Yes, yep. They're not recommending anything with Johnson & Johnson.
Supervisor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. How much money has the county put into the lawsuit?
Put in what?
Have the lawsuit? I mean, have we?
It's the 20%.
Okay, so we contributed 20% of.
Of the we didn't put anything in. They took 20% off the top, kind of like work comp claim
Oh,
or,
gotcha.
yeah, it's an insurance claim.
Contingency sort of thing.
Yeah, they took 20, their cut was 20% of the procedure, or the monies.
Whatever came out, okay.
Yes,
I
yep,
got it.
correct, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I watched two of those programs. The second one confused me. I thought I had it at first.
That's how I felt.
The residual is what really got me was if they go bankrupt, then we don't get any of that money.
I don't, yeah, but Supervisor
But if
Steele,
they do go
Yeah.
pay out, then that's added to whatever the payment.
okay.
So it's not quite all what it looks to be, you know, but there again, why back out now? You might as well look and see what the whole thing is,
Yeah.
you know, no commitment.
Yep. That'll be my plan, more information to come, I guess, if that's okay.
All right.
Keep going? Yep. Sorry. So we're doing this a little different. Normally we do when we do CIP, we put that under the report, and then as the resolutions change, we would change the report. Just because of all the auditing and all the concerns about documentation with these monies, we are gonna do a report first, but then we're gonna have the resolutions on the, under business items, and then we will ask you to actually approve the report. But if you change anything in those resolutions, it'll be, the report will be changed as, the plan, I guess, will be changed as amended by the resolutions. So I understand it's a little different than what we normally would do, but just because of everything that's tied with this, we felt that we need the resolutions plus a plan to be approved in case auditing in the future. So I'll just go through the plan. So there's one item that's not on this plan that I am planning on bringing forward. CVIC has requested $20,000. We'll give you a report of what CVIC is, but it's our incubation center that we've been in cooperation with for many, many years with City of Eau Claire and Eau Claire County. And they're in need of what am I trying to think of? Boardroom or a conference room with some technology and that's accessible to everybody. Currently, they're on the second floor and it's not accessible and it's a problem. But we have about $294,000 just in contingency if you approve this plan. So I think we got plenty of money available. It just came in, the request came in late and I couldn't get it through all the processes. So the plan would bring that to economic development early in August and then to bring that forward to the full board. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. So changes from the last plan on top for the telcos. So the county board passed resolutions 0622 and 0722, and that was for Bloomer Telephone Company and Natera. They did not receive those grants. I got information from that maybe last Thursday or Friday. So what we're gonna have to bring a resolution back to rescind that money because the county board approved it through a resolution. They both want us to keep that money available for their next round, which they believe is going to be in September. I have talked to Bloomer Telephone, and what they're talking about is presenting the exact same request for a grant from the state. But Natera hasn't gotten back to me yet. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. But I think the important thing with that, if the county board decides to do that, is we put a time limit on when they can request those funds, because we're going to run into time limits as we move forward with this. But unfortunately, Bloomer's Telephone said they're in the top like 10. They assume they're going to get it next time. This round of grants, PSC grants, were with the state budget, which wasn't ARPA funds. The first round was with ARPA funds, and it's their understanding that they're going to use the ARPA funds again, which actually is good for us because what they're required to do for the state, they're required to do for us. So it does clean it up a little bit. So I'll bring those forward, as we go forward with this, but just wanted to make you aware of that. I believe the total dollar amount you approved for that was $500,000. So I think there's $500,000 between the two. So that's a little disappointing, but we're trying to work through that. And then I tried to just keep with what I heard from the members during our last session. I did add $500,000 to the range. The originally was $500,000 there. I put it up to $1 million. The reason for that seems like quite a big jump. But the reason for that is, as I've been talking with the DNR, the estimates we've gotten so far for cleaning up that site is between $100,000 and $500,000. But talking to the specialists at the DNR, they said anytime you see fragments or things go off-site, and that's a very small area of property we own, he's seen that cost increase quite a bit. Because not only do you have to mitigate it, you have to bring soil back in because it's on somebody else's land, right? But we can take that whenever that project is done, which we would assume should be done next year, bring those funds back to the county board and you guys could reallocate those funds. So it isn't like you'd lose it or it'd just be sitting there and then it'd go someplace else. So that's the reason for that one. And then I put in the new bathrooms for the Otter Lake Park, and then those had showers, and then new bathroom, new well for Pine Point. Again, kind of, everybody can really touch those. And then picnic tables, there's 30 of those for, I think that's every campground we own. And then there's an automatic firewood dispenser, which will help with our people working out there so they can get wood and our caretakers don't have to try and do that after hours or at night. And we really think that's going to be a big boost for them. And we'll go through all these during the resolution. I did add $500,000 to the road improvements for highway. A lot of that, Brian tried to anticipate what the cost was going to be moving forward, but it was even higher than what he anticipated. So really the $500,000 would be to supplement the project that he's already submitted, but make sure we're covering those costs. So we can talk more about that. But the last one on this report is the land conservation forest management. If you recall that, the previous committee requested $500,000 for that project, but there really wasn't a design to what they knew what they kind of wanted to do, the purpose of it, but there really wasn't a design for that. So Linda's worked with some experts in the field and came back with a recommendation to the committee. So she'll go through that. And then the committee changed what we were going to do and had the $500,000 up front just as the project and changed it to $250,000 in 2022 would be available. And then a resolution would have to come back through for the other $250,000 for 2023. So I'll have Linda just give the report on that, and then we'll try to answer any questions.
Randy?
Yeah.
Specify which committee, please.
Land Conservation Forest Management.
We didn't split the funding. That was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was when it got to exec. I'm sorry. Too much stuff on me.
Thank you.
Thank you. You should have received a handout in your packet, kind of stepping out the history of how we got to this point, and then also an implementation plan. Oh, she's got it up there. So I'm just going to briefly kind of go over this. The one thing I wanted to point out is when I was doing research on this solution, stating nitrogen in groundwater becoming a problem goes as far back as 1971. That was something surprising to me. I've been in the field of conservation for 25 years now, and I thought this was a more recent issue on the forefront. So seeing it listed in state of Wisconsin water quality back in 1971 was kind of outstanding, or not outstanding, but it stood out to me because what we've all been focusing on has been surface water. And then in 1985, Chippewa County did a baseline groundwater sampling study, and that was unheard of at the time. Groundwater studies really didn't start until 2000s, and then people were doing counties were doing 1 to 2 townships a year, 2 to 3 townships a year, covering their whole county over 10 years. So after 10 years, you kind of got a baseline, and Chippewa was ahead of the game doing the baseline back in 85. And then again in 2000, and then again in 2016. And the thing that's notable between those 3 studies is you look at 85 and 2007, the nitrate levels kind of stayed the same. And then in 2016, it jumped up by 6% in only 9 years. So 22 years, it stayed the same. And then in the next 9 years, it jumped up. So they approved another testing. A lot of testing has occurred between 16 and 22, but the main one that I wanted to point out that's going on right now. So we don't have the results of it, but they're testing the 200 wells in the high nitrate areas to see if there's an increase, to see if there's a rate within 6 years. So they're trying to see if there's an increase in how fast the nitrate is going up. So with that said, in February, prior to me coming on to Chippewa County, the LCFM committee did allocate $500,000 in ARPA funding to enhance testing programs, compile data, and come up with a demonstration program. So in March of 2022, I brought Kevin Masaryk back to the committee, since he was the one who's done most of our testing, and to see what additional testing would be valuable to us. And it was at that committee meeting that he told us that Chippewa County is rich with data. You have the data to show that you do have a nitrogen problem when nitrogen is applied corn over sandstone, and that he did not feel that additional testing would be valuable to the county. So at that meeting, the committee consensus was to shift the focus to mitigation efforts, and that was the directive given to me going forward. So I reached out to all the experts that I knew in the state, and we do have some pretty good experts, Kevin Masaryk being one. He was the one doing the groundwater study. And then Mark Borkhardt, he's a research microbiologist at USDA ARS, and he's the one, if you've heard of the Kewaunee County study for the bacteria over on the eastern side of the state, or the SWIG study. He's headed both of those projects. And he looked at our data and said, yeah, we have enough data to identify the problem. He didn't feel that any of his work would be the one thing he could have done is done risk factors, but the risk factor we have is nitrogen over sandstone. So he didn't think that going his route would be beneficial to us. And he recommended Ken Bradbury, director of Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey, to focus on the bedrock and our source areas of where the contamination is coming from. So I reached out to Ken. Ken was also in the SWIG study, and he pointed out that Chippewa County, when the sand mines first came in, underwent a groundwater flow study because they wanted to make sure that there was no, they didn't want the sand mines to deplete the groundwater. And so a mod flow was developed at that time for Chippewa County to map the groundwater. And so we do have a tool on hand that we can utilize to help identify the source areas for the nitrate contamination. So that was good to know that we, once again, are ahead of the game. We have the tools that we need to help us address this issue. And then they recommended Ken Genskow, UW professor, environmental planning and policy. And he looks at community-wide problems, not just, small, landowner by landowner problems. And he recommended or suggested, a community solution in short term. The one thing we were initially looking at was reverse osmosis. We thought maybe a subsidy for reverse osmosis for people with high nitrate wells. And Kevin Masaryk pointed out that it's not without its flaws when it comes to nitrogen. With bacteria, reverse osmosis will remove protozoans, it'll remove bacteria, it'll remove viruses. But when it comes to the chemicals, it only removes a percentage of the chemical. And that's when it's fully functioning and working right out of the factory. If you need to do your maintenance, you need to make sure you clean your filters. And so he didn't think that it was a sustainable solution with your high nitrate. So that's when we talked about some possibility of community water refill stations. And then finally, I discussed with Chris Clayton, Wisconsin DNR Ag Runoff Section Chief. He led the efforts for the state to establish a nitrate standard. And what that would have established was a state law saying this is the minimum conservation practices that need to be in effect in order to protect our groundwater. Like I said, up until this point, the state is really focused on surface water, and we have NR 151 Ag performance standards that are the minimum to protect surface water, but it doesn't really protect groundwater. And the rule failed. And the importance in that is, in order for my office to enforce violations, we cannot be more restrictive than the state. So we have standards for surface water that if there's a manure runoff issue, our office goes out and addresses it, and we can require the landowner to clean up their spill. With groundwater, the state failed to set those standards, and so therefore we cannot enforce nitrate protection. So therefore we have to rely on voluntary and incentive programs until that comes back around. So that leads into our implementation plan. So we looked short-term, long-term. Short-term was the community water refill stations. We would be working with the geologists of Wisconsin Natural History and local plumbers and well drillers to identify areas in our high nitrate area, but that are low risk for nitrate contamination, and work with the townships to identify oversight for these stations to provide a clean water source where landowners don't have to drive to town to purchase bottled water. That's what they're doing now. They cannot drink their water if it's over 10, and a lot of these areas are over 20. So we're looking at ways to provide a water source in the short term so that they have a safe drinking water area. Plus, it would eliminate all the plastic that's generated from all the bottled water that they're currently purchasing. The second thing we would be looking at is working with agronomists, operators, economic development to promote a widespread cover crop use in nitrogen-sensitive areas. So this would be the incentive. This would be the cost-sharing program to get a practice that is very beneficial to conservation, but may have some risks and may have some annoyances with farmers. Short-term cover crop, the main reason we use it is for soil erosion control over winter, to have something growing on the soil during the spring melts and the rains. But what it also does is it scavenges for nitrogen in the fall, utilizing the nitrogen that corn did not use. The downfall is it has to be put on after, it typically is put on after the corn is harvested, which is late in the fall, so we need to have it on earlier so that we can get growth to cover the soil during the winter. Part of this program would to work with aerial seeding of cover crops so that the seed can be aerial spread in August, give it a chance to start to establish under the grain crop, either soybean or corn, and then have an actual plant there in the fall when it's harvested. This pilot project was done about 10 years ago up by Bloomer, and so we do have an aerial applicator that he still does this for some of the farmers up there. So we know that there's interest in the area, and it's something that we think with a little bit of promotion and some cost sharing that we could get a more widespread use of this. In addition to that, to promote custom no-till planting. So in addition to having that cover over the winter, the last thing we want to do is till up the cover crop in the spring, because that then releases the carbon, the organic matter. The soil is healthier with the least amount of tillage that occurs out there. So if we can work with our custom harvesters who do the harvesting in the fall, and maybe providing them a spring custom no-till incentive, providing them, the landowners, finding ways, to incentivize the purchase of the no-till drill, that would only increase the benefit of the cover crop that we established in the fall. On top of this, in addition to this, we'd be working with the researchers to develop a program to track the results of the remediation. Everyone who receives cost sharing would have a baseline water test, so we would know what at least their water test is at the farm, and then monitoring that over time, looking at possibly the tile studies. If there's tiles in the field, we can look at what kind of nitrogen is leaching out, but making sure that if we're going to be doing something that's not being done anywhere else in the state, we want actual data that can be used to show if this is working. And then working, in addition, developing information education program. We've already got to start on a farmer-led watershed group. We're meeting in 2 weeks with interested farmers who want to work outside the box and find solutions that aren't typical, haven't worked in the last 50 years, and want to be innovative solution finders. The soil health field days would be days where we're going out there and showing farmers who are actually using the cover crops and showing how their soil has improved over time. And in not a long amount of time, they've been showing that, using the cover crops, their soil is getting healthier in a, probably 5 to 10 years. And then educational literature, not just for the agriculture, but for the homeowners, making sure that everyone who is drinking water in these areas, that they're testing their water and not drinking water that's high in nitrates. So that's a mouthful, so any questions?
Any questions? I would bring up Supervisor Hunt. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I just have a quick question. Is 500,000 sufficient to cover everything at this point, or is this something that we might have to revisit again in the future?
So we feel initially to getting the community wells and starting a cover crop program. Now, the cover crop program is an incentive program. Once they start using this, we're hoping that we can show that it's a benefit to their production, not a detriment. That's kind of reducing the risk, and hopefully they're no longer needing the cost sharing after the initial use. So it's not supposed to be a long-term payment on the cover crop side of things. And so hopefully with a big push from the ARPA funds, we feel that we can get other farmers then to see, hey, that is working, and more apt to try it. And we do have other cost share programs that could then maybe subsidize this in the future.
Thank you.
There were 2 new developments. Wisconsin Supreme Court just read the case this morning, has approved counties' authority to adopt rules under public health that are more stringent than state law. So I read that just this morning, so it gives you another tool. And the second thing is, so in our 2016 data, we have an area that's identified not as one of the 20 part per millions, it was identified as 10. And 4 of those neighbors, the lowest, they tested in 2020. And the lowest nitrate test was 19.84, and the other ones are all over 20, which shows that we're getting an exponential growth. So I don't often disagree with Kevin, but I think there might be some benefit in some of those spots to follow up.
And I think that's the 200 that he's testing this year. I think that's what he's looking at, is to see what the exponential growth is and be more intensive with those areas.
So the 500,000 might be a drop in the bucket for what we are going to end up having to deal with, but it's a start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We will then move to the business items. Resolution 31-22.
Resolution number 31-22, resolution to authorize utilization of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funding for Public Arms Fire Range Project. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby approve the utilization of $1 million of the American Rescue Plan Act funding to the public firearms range for the environmental remediation projects and other costs associated with the potential closing of the range in 2022 through 2024. And be it further resolved that these funds be transferred from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund to to the public firearms range account on at least an annual basis and upon completion of the environmental projects and other costs associated with the potential closing of the range. And be it further resolved that by March of 2024, any ARPA funds allocated to a project that is not expected to be completed within the allotted timeframe may be redirected to other projects as approved by separate resolution brought by the county administrator to the executive committee and county board for approval to determine how those funds will be allocated. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
Supervisor Hunt. move to approve.
Is there a second? Discussion.
I talked quite a bit about this already, but I just give you an update. I have sent a letter to the DNR requesting the closure. So that's the start of the process. The enhanced gate will be put up, I believe, next week. Larry, is that correct? That's
The end of this week.
end of this week is the time frame. So we've already started the process.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will then call the vote. Green to approve, red to disapprove. Okay.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 3222.
Resolution 32-22, resolution to authorize utilization of American Rescue Plan Act funding for county parks projects. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby approve the utilization of $555,000 of the American Rescue Plan Act funding to the Facilities and Parks Division for the parks improvement projects in 2022 through 2024, and be it further resolved that these funds be transferred from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund to the County Parks Capital Improvement Account on at least an annual basis and upon completion of the parks improvement projects, and be it further resolved that by March of 2024, any ARPA funds allocated to a project that is not expected to be completed within the allotted timeframe may be redirected to other projects as approved by separate resolution brought by the county administrator to the executive committee and county board for approval to determine how those funds will be allocated. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
Erickson will make that motion.
Is there a second?
Supervisor Bowman.
Bowman, second. Discussion.
Larry Ritzinger's here if you have any questions on this. I know we've talked about him before, so if there's any specific questions, he's more than willing to answer them, but they're pretty straightforward projects.
Any other discussion? None, we will then call the vote. Well, we get the screen up.
They can vote.
All set? Okay, green to approve, red to disapprove. Yep.
Twenty yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 3322.
Resolution number 33-22, resolution to authorize utilization of American Rescue Plan Act funding for highway department projects. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby approve the utilization of $8 million of the American Rescue Plan Act funding to the Highway Department for roadway project improvements in 2022 through 2024. And be it further resolved that these funds be transferred from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund to the Highway Department Fund on at least an annual basis and upon completion of the road improvement projects. And be it further resolved that by March of 2024, any ARPA funds allocated to a project that is not expected to be completed within the allotted timeframe may be redirected to other projects as approved by separate resolution brought by the county administrator to the executive committee and county board for approval to determine how those funds will be allocated. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay. Motion approved by Skorsky. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a tie.
Wait,
Jim?
Later.
Jim Flater.
So you guys have seen this plan before. Nothing's really changed except for, like I said, and Brian is here if you have any questions, but it's really just the extra 500,000 is to cover the inflation cost for the material cost is essentially what's going up so crazy.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, are we ready for the vote? We are ready for the vote. Green to approve, red to disapprove.
So much easier to spend
Can release.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Resolution 3422.
Resolution number 34-22, resolution to authorize utilization of American Rescue Plan Act funding for land conservation and forest management projects. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby approve the utilization of $500,000 of the American Rescue Plan Act funding to the Land Conservation and Forest Management Department for the contaminant mitigation in residential wells project in 2022 through 2024. And be it further resolved that these funds be transferred from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund to the LCFM Groundwater Study Account on at least an annual basis and upon completion of the contaminant mitigation in residential wells project. And be it further resolved that by March of 2024, any ARPA funds allocated to a project that is not expected to be completed within the allotted timeframe may be redirected to other projects as approved by separate resolution brought by the county administrator to the executive committee and county board for approval to determine how those funds will be allocated, forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
Supervisor Bergeron, motions to approve.
And is there a second?
Seidlitz will second it.
Seidlitz, second. Okay. Discussion.
Yeah, you guys, Linda's the expert, so I don't think I can really add a lot to this discussion.
Supervisor Skorsky.
I guess my only concern is that we're spending all this money and yet we're not allowed to go to the source, the actual source of the problem. The state is tying our hands, and I would like to direct some efforts into really focusing on working to go to the source. You know, you hate to spend money without results. Perfect example is the Lake Wissota Stewardship Project. We had a lot of money spent. We had a lot of private donors spend money, and the water quality decreased the whole time the program went in. And we really need to spend this money wisely. And that's part of the reason why we broke it in half, to see if we're actually getting results. But I would like to see a lot of effort put into focusing on going after the state and allowing us to go to the source of these problems.
Yeah, the legislation of it. Yeah, that's a big part. It's, as you know, the lobbying side on the other side is very tough to get any leeway with. So yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely on the state to allow some local control in some of these issues, but I just don't know if it's going to happen. But definitely push for it. I mean, absolutely. And there's organizations that are pushing for it all the time, so it's definitely the key.
Supervisor Schmidt.
I have a question for Linda first, and then I've got some thoughts I'd probably like to add. Linda, how many acres do we have that are susceptible to nitrate issues in the county? In other words, agricultural areas over sandstone near the surface?
We looked that up last week, and I believe it's around in the sensitive area, so I'm not exactly sure, how much of it.
It's a guesstimate.
300,000. 300,000 acres.
Okay. I find it interesting that we have a couple supervisors who are in districts with very little, if any, nitrate issues, and they're having problems with $500,000 allocated to staff. Either you don't trust your fellow supervisors on a committee, or you don't trust staff. We just got done approving $8 million to highway without any provisions for splitting it up or anything above and beyond what we were asking here for $500,000. We've got an issue in this county. We've had it for a number of years. It's getting worse. We've got citizens that can't drink their water. They have to buy water in a store. One provision of this is to get community wells where they're ready to exist, or if we have to drill new ones that have a safe level so they can get water for basically free. And the other provision is to work on no-till. It's the first best agricultural practice for mitigating nitrates is hay ground. Alfalfa is what the one study showed us. The reality is we're not going to see 300,000 acres of alfalfa in this county on a continual basis. There's no market for it. The second best is to no-till or to establish cover crops, and whether it be with a no-till drill upon taking corn silage off or aerial, however, and then also no-tilling into that residue in spring to try and keep something green and utilizing the nitrogen, keep it tied up in a zone that it can be used. $500,000 and we got a $100 million budget, really? And we got to split this into two pieces to bring it back to this board in another year when we have a problem that's been going on and has been increasing in recent years. It's time to do something. We've studied it long enough, and this is the best we can come up with advice we've gotten from experts. If somebody has a better idea, I'd like to hear it. But that better idea is not a stick, it's a carrot. It has to be. We don't have the money for a stick, and it's not politically palatable. So.
Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, are we ready for the vote? Green to approve, red to disapprove. Yes.
20 yes, 0 no.
Resolution passes. Ordinance.
Nope, number 5.
Oop. Oop. Now the whole ARPA plan with, as amended, which I guess were no amendments.
No amendments.
As put forward. Do I hear a motion to approve the ARPA plan?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Mr. Steele and
Erickson.
Erickson second. Discussion. Supervisor Hunt?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a really quick question. I know that we had talked about the piece with the remediation and the cleanup of the gun range. Was any of that money going to be going towards creating a new gun range? No, this is just the remediation piece of it.
Correct, yep. And then the money would come back, once that's done, you guys could decide what to do with it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, then we will call the vote on the ARPA plan. Those in favor, press the green button, and those disapproved, red. Yep.
20 yes, 0 no.
Okay. Now we'll jump to our ordinances. Ordinance 2-22,
It's the first reading.
first reading.
Yeah, so this ordinance before you really was something driven by the executive committee. They had several, maybe 3 or 4 meetings about this to discuss it. And you can see the changes in red. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory what the changes are. Probably the committee members are probably better to answer the questions than I am. It really wasn't driven by administration at all. It's really driven by the committee.
Okay. Carrie?
I guess I had a couple of things.
wondering why this came about, and, is this, to me, it almost feels like, I don't know, I'm at work, I work in a prison, so anytime I'm gone, I have to bring a doctor's note, so do I have to bring a doctor's note every time I'm gone? Or I have some kind of a surgery, or if I have to leave because I have stomach cramps, it used to be we were accountable adults that we did it and people saw it, because you can go on the meeting to see what percentage of our meetings were missing and things like that as well, so I'm just wondering how this came about and the purpose of this.
We'll open it up to the exec committee. Otherwise I can explain it. We had no definition for attendance. There was no definition in our code as to what attendance was. So that's where it came about, that lengthy discussion as to, what is attendance. And so basically, that was the definition that the committee came up with for attendance. So it's kind of, you have a code and you have something like attendance and it's not defined. So was defining it. The absences shall be noted. It doesn't mean that a person can't be absent. It's just that they'll be noted. So if somebody does get ill and they have to leave, it's just going to be noted that you were here and you had to leave illness or whatever.
But it's 5 every 12 months.
Well, and so that's a whole new other process, because then if there are unexcused absences and it meets that criteria, then it would, where do we have that written here? The executive committee, before providing recommendations to county board if needed on action. So that doesn't mean that if you miss 5, you're automatically jumped into this. If it doesn't meet the criteria of an excused absence, then it would go to the committee and they would decide whether it should something that's move forward or just, a discussion with the individual, what type of action to be taken. Is that pretty close to where we're at, folks?
Only point of clarification, I would say, I thought there was quite a bit of discussion and there wasn't either approved or disapproved absent. It was just absent.
Right.
It's not, right? I just want to be
Right.
clear.
So it'd be discretional to the committee as to.
It's not excused or not excused.
Right.
That language is not in here.
Not in there. It's a work in progress. Ken.
I'd just like to point out that it's up there on number 2, it's not 5 total absences, it's in each committee or each commission. So it's actually a very lenient policy. So if that helps ease your concerns. So. At least that's the way I read it. We can ask Attorney Pauls if that is the correct reading.
The committees are actually, in boards and commissions are spelled out which one they're for. So it has the definitions of those commissions.
This is any single committee.
I know, but it up.
Right. What I'm pointing out is not cumulative between committees. It's each single committee.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's a very lenient policy.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It's per committee. It's not for all the committees.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Yes, go ahead, Gary.
I guess my other was, what is the criteria that the executive board is going to be looking at? Is it going to be flawed by opinions on what the executive board, if they like you or not, and whether or not that's an excuse or we're getting rid of you? I mean, how is that equitable and equal amongst everybody?
That is the part of the ordinance that's yet to be decided, because right now, if this comes up, it goes to the executive committee to discuss. And so do we have a chart or anything like that? No, we don't. So you will see this section 2 coming back many times the committee on other various items, but then trying to clean up some of this language to make things more clear. It is a work in progress. Bishop? Or Steele, excuse me.
Yeah, just to answer some questions that were just asked. The executive board talked extensively about situations. I mean, I guess, you know, if it was, it'd have to be very, very, very serious in order to have somebody even recommended by the executive committee that we'd have a problem. Because, I mean, if you got, family comes first, period. So that shouldn't even address anything like that. So, yeah, you can't have a chart, but I think that people ought to be a little accountable. I know, I was looking at the minutes of one meeting in our county, and they were still having a virtual meeting, which surprised me. And they only had 50% attendance in a virtual meeting. Now, these weren't county board supervisors, but it was actually happening. And that shouldn't be. Thank you.
So as elected officials in their duties to our constituents, so is it, I understand we just need to get language in place, but is it, I mean, is it the chair's job to have a standard and a threshold for the board, or is it to our constituents? Or are we just trying to clean out some language stuff so we have some sort of policy?
Well, yeah, a lot of this was just to kind of clean this thing up. But, you know, as the board chair, I believe it's the constituents' responsibility to deal with their supervisors. I mean, when you're elected, and that's who you're responsible to. The other responsibility comes into play is the functioning of the county government. Again, if we don't get quorums and now we can't get our business done now, then that's something we have to take a look at. Yeah. Annette? Supervisor Hunt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to kind of piggyback on Supervisor Bischel's comment there, I do think that putting together something like this is getting dangerously close to taking away the constituent's voice. So I can't in good conscience support this. So thank you.
I guess my only comment is if you don't have any standards, you don't know what's expected, then what's the point? You know, I mean, we know we're supposed to be here second Tuesday of the month at 6 o'clock. I mean, everybody makes the effort to get here. I agree with what Supervisor Steele said about Zoom meetings. I'm not a techie. I don't sit in front of this thing all day. I might forget I have a Zoom meeting because I'm doing something else. But if I know I have to attend somewhere, I will make the effort, you know, come hell or high water to get there. And, you know, I guess I also take what Supervisor Bischel said about representing your constituents. I take that very seriously. That's why I try to get to every meeting that that I'm scheduled for. So, and I don't think I've missed any yet, and I don't intend to in the future. I just feel that was, you know, by me running for this position, that was something I accepted as part of the duty, part of the job, part of the representation of the constituency. So I guess that's just how I feel about it. I just, I made the commitment, so I'm gonna make every effort to be here, and if there's some reason that I can't, I'm gonna leave. We gotta let the chair know if we're gonna miss, or the chairman of the committee,
County.
several hours before, if we're gonna be absent, if you can't absolutely be there. So I realize human nature falls in here too, and, things do happen, life happens, but anyway, I guess I just feel strongly that, I'm gonna make every effort to make every meeting. So,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion? So only what we see here in red is what is proposed to be changed. So it's nothing else to be read into it. What we're looking at right now is what you see in red. Any other discussion? Okay, this is first reading, so we can move on to ordinance 0322.
Read the title or no? Okay. So this ordinance is to create a crime prevention funding board. This is something that can be done through state statute, and the purpose of the board would be to allocate funds that would be charged to a $20 fee that would be charged to any misdemeanor or felony conviction. The purpose of the fund would be to any organization, nonprofit in the county that's doing crime prevention. This has kind of been moved forward hand in hand with Crime Stoppers, who normally would apply for this, but any entity can apply for it. Then they can use that for any crime prevention measures. They could have a website, they could have, which Crime Stoppers does currently. They could offer money for tips, stuff like that. So it's kind of running hand in hand with that. It is statutory, the members of the committee or the board or whatever they're calling this, board. It's statutory. We can only have those that it says that we can have. If you see number 2 there, it says shall. So those are currently our CJCC, our Criminal Justice Coalition Council, does have these members on there. They have some additional members, but the idea would be to poll that core, so they could have the CJCC meeting, then they could have this meeting right after. Typically, they only meet once a year, and that's to go through applications for requests for funds. That's normally what they do. But the money comes from the people convicted of misdemeanor or felony accounts, and it's for crime prevention.
Okay. Any questions? Supervisor Ives.
I just had a question, and I'm sure county administrator probably answered this. So it is state statute, but it's just so weird to see a committee that it's a permanent appointment.
Yeah, saw that too. Yep, that is odd.
It's part of the statute.
I guess I don't know that for sure. I know it says in the explanation, but I don't know if it actually reads it out in that statute. Rose will be here next time. She can answer that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I did find that out.
Supervisor Bishop?
Can it be more than $20?
No, it's set by statute.
Gotcha.
And Supervisor Steele?
Yeah, I had a little problem with it because of, people on the board wasn't representing, nobody there representing north part of the county, but I was told that this is all statute by the state and therefore couldn't be changed. Well, statute to the state will answer the question about term. All members shall serve terms determined by the crime board. That's in the statute in the state. Also, didn't put in one of the number 4 on the list would be one of the following county officials or his or her designee. So in other words, there's only 4 people on this.
I don't know the details of this, Buck. It's Rose's deal. I just know what she presented and what I just read. That's what I know. It looks like there's several more members there, but I don't know what to tell you. It shall consist of the following members, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members there.
Says 3 and then one of the following.
Yeah, I don't know. Where are you reading that?
State statutes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. Rose will be here next time. You guys aren't doing anything. I can get your questions and send them to her to answer them for next time.
I guess you ought to investigate that before you bring it forward.
I can't address this right now. If you want to, if you're able to send me exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah.
I can take a look at it. Kind of scanning through here to see what you're even talking about.
It's the same statute that you recited in there.
59, 54?
And I think it's 23 or something like that after that.
28.
28.
Yep.
59,
54, 28.
54, 28. And I read the last sentence of paragraph B, 3B, and the 4th sentence of section C.
Yeah, we'll definitely have your questions answered next time. I don't have that.
Well, it'd be helpful if they were, is there any way you can just send me an email? So that I can look at it?
I took a picture of it. I can send you the picture.
No, but exactly what is your question? In terms of, are you indicating that the same ones that are indicated that are members under the statute aren't listed the same in the proposed ordinance? Is that the question?
Well,
It's not
first of all, I had asked a question about adding somebody to that board. And I was told, no, we're going strictly by the state statutes. Okay?
That's correct.
And I looked at the state statute, and there's some of the state statute that wasn't put in there.
And I'm just asking you to show me what exactly wasn't put in there. So that I can look and see if I can see the discrepancy myself. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah,
We'll call you. We'll call you, Supervisor Steele, and make sure you get your questions answered, make sure it comes back to the board. That's,
We'll get it figured out.
yeah,
it's
a good question.
I was told that, and it's same statute that you're trying to recite right there.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, it's only first reading, so we will move on. Agenda items for future consideration.
I just wanted to answer a question that I couldn't answer to Buck Steele earlier during the HR orientation. Buck had asked about the volunteer application. It's actually 2 pages, so you're able to shorten it from, if it was 7, down to 2. And the volunteer would have to sign 1 acknowledgement for the policy, and then an emergency contact form. So we've streamlined it considerably.
Down to 2.
Down to 2
Great,
pages.
thank you.
Okay,
See how easy all that is?
a gold star for today, yeah. Okay. If you do have something, get it to me and we'll try to squeeze it in on our long agendas here. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I so move. Supervisor Schmidt.
Seconded by Supervisor Bishop. Green to stay, or excuse, green.
Odine.
Green to go and red to stay.
Oh, my God.
No, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Didn't look too bad.
Please.
Glenn, you got to vote. Glenn,
Of course.
Longer agenda package, though.
you got to vote.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I brought the statute. I can why.
Oh.
He's
Settle down, he didn't. Just give me a amount of coming in. No.
he's
Is that the,
reasonable.
is that the oil guy?
Are we off the air?
But really,
You're talking about this hard to see. See is a prime person. Or following officials or his or her designee.
Right.
A is county executive don't have. B, if the county does not have county executive, county administrator.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And C is the chairperson of the board of supervisors does not have or a county executive. Okay, so I didn't put that whole dedicates the county administrator. That's what I.
but number 4 says one county official. Whereas from there down, just one.
Right. And these don't exist.
And then you have
County
this,
executive doesn't exist.
I
It's
know
just the
that.
county.
but it says chief elected official municipality. You want that person on there, or do you want our county administrator? You don't have one.
No,
It was a
not-
man Wendy wanted to see.
it's one of the following one, A, B, or C, not, doesn't have any, or 5.
Oh, okay, I see where you're saying. Okay. I didn't, yeah, but you see where I was, you know.
Yeah, the
And
first
up
time
here-
I read it, you gotta kind of run here, so you,
Yeah.
it makes it look like everything below here.
Right.
Even D is only one of those.
Okay, I see
It's
that.
only for- Does
Okay,
that make sense?
yep, now, up above, it says, boy, sure is.
Get up for that.
Or 3 here. Under 3,
No,
under B, it's county. Or county crime board.
okay, right here. Members shall serve for terms that are determined by the crime board.
The utility tax?
Yes, so they're gonna look at that, they're always 2 hours, they're gonna be long.
And the crime board is different than this.
Just be the county. Yep, yeah, we don't put any, like other.
I gotta think about that one.
We like library.
You're right on the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see it.
So I'm gonna go with that one.
We have a
But I'd let
Permanent
both
term.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, let them know what's going on. Yeah, I'll try my best.
Okay, that might be something we'll have to address.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah, you got a challenging assignment. You got the committees you have to go over.
Like Baron comes.
Got our agenda all put together.
But Lincoln County, we had nothing.
All right.
These guys are always unique here.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had this conference.
So,
I think they.
I love when it's like dark.
I go up to
yeah.
because our kids.
If we had just.
More button on that tablet?
When they went.
Just spread it up on top.
Housing authority, so they.
I mean, are they people not taking